We're only going to get to one Grand Prix. Monaco has to be the one, because nowhere else has the charisma, nowhere else has the excitement, nowhere else has the setting. Nowhere else do you see the cars and drivers so close, and nowhere else do you get such a sensation of raw power and speed, because Monaco is unique as its very special kind of street circuit. Now, in the last 6 Grand Prix, the all-conquering McLaren team have only won twice. Is today going to see number 3? Well, who knows? Monaco is a lottery.
It's a lottery where Riccardo Patrese could hold the winning ticket, for he's on top of his considerable form after winning the San Marino Grand Prix 2 weeks ago. He's Grand Prix's most experienced driver, but he seems to be getting better all the time.
I like Monaco, I like very much. I don't have much problem in any kind of circuits because with all the experience that I have over my shoulder, it's quite easy for me to race in a straight circuit or in a very quick circuit. I mean, at least all this year they teach me something.
But the wild card here at Monaco is the sensational Frenchman Jean Alesi, third on the grid in his Tyrrell Ford for his first Grand Prix at Monaco. He was terrific at Phoenix, he's been terrific here. Street circuits obviously suit him.
I like street circuit, but for me it's also the best circuit to use my car, because I haven't a lot of horsepower. And for me, it's much better to have not a long straight line.
Last year's winner, Ayrton Senna, is looking for better luck here at Monaco than he had at Imola. It was a stone wedged between the brake caliper and the wheel that literally machined the rim off to cause his retirement. And really good news is that Lotus at last seem to have climbed out of their bad patch. Derek Warwick starts 13th, and Martin Donnelly ahead of him is 11th, after a lot of hard and obviously rewarding work on the car. So, what matters at Monaco as far as the car is concerned? Everything, but especially handling and getting the best setup. Jonathan Palmer.
18 corners in 2 miles makes Monaco the most tortuous circuit on the Grand Prix calendar. Indeed, corners such as the Lowe's hairpin and Rascasse are so tight that a driver can actually run out of lock if he takes the wrong line, resulting in a 3-point turn. The ability to flick the wheel from lock to lock is therefore most important. Each driver develops his own individual design of steering wheel, recorded in minute detail by the manufacturer. Of course, all wheels are small by family car standards, though drivers are often forced to use a smaller steering wheel than they would like, just so that it can fit in today's tiny cockpits. Even so, lack of room for knuckles and arms can still be compromising, and several drivers use steering wheels with the bottom flattened to provide leg clearance. Quick release mechanisms are also needed to ease entry and exit, so if you see a driver throwing the steering wheel away from his crashed car, it didn't break, he's just getting out. Unlike driving on the road, it's impossible to feed the wheel through your hands, so it remains tightly held at the 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock position. The cars therefore have ultra-responsive steering. Small movements of the wheel cause large changes in front wheel angle, and while this is essential for rapid changes of direction, it makes the cars very nervous and twitchy, as well as heavy to drive. The steering's lightest at low speeds, for as the speed builds up, so does the downforce, and at 150 miles an hour, these cars effectively weigh over 2 tons. Just imagine driving a heavy van with this tiny steering wheel, with 1 foot wide front tyres, and no power steering. Exactly, mighty heavy. Another reason why the drivers need to be fit.
À ses côtés, il a le triple champion du monde français, Alain Prost, sur la Ferrari numéro 1, qui a signé donc le deuxième temps.
On the front row of the grid, on the right-hand side, Ayrton Senna, the 45th time in pole position in the Marlboro McLaren Honda with a time of 1 minute 21.314, and beside him, Alain Prost in Ferrari number 1, 1 minute 21.776.
Griglia di partenza, troviamo in pole position Ayrton Senna, campione del mondo 1988 con la Marlboro McLaren Honda, che ha stabilito il nuovo record sul circuito di Monaco in 1:21.314. Al suo fianco Alain Prost, 3 volte campione del mondo su Ferrari numero 1.
So, ein Überblick über die Startaufstellung. Auf der Pole Position zum 45. Mal Ayrton Senna mit dem Marlboro McLaren Honda und einer Zeit von 1:21.314. Eine absolute Rekordzeit hier in Monaco auf dem ersten Startplatz. Auf dem zweiten Startplatz Alain Prost mit 1:21.776.
Nous allons donc saluer l'arrivée de la famille princière par l'hymne monégasque. Suite de la présentation maintenant de la ligne de départ avec la deuxième ligne. Jean Alesi. Jean Alesi pour sa première présence ici sur le circuit de Monaco avec la Tyrrell Ford numéro 4 a fait un exploit extraordinaire puisqu'il réalise le 3e temps. Formidable donc Jean Alesi. Il n'est qu'à peine à sa 2e saison de Formule 1. À ses côtés, il aura le vétéran Riccardo Patrese, 195 Grands Prix. 195 Grands Prix, donc déjà participé avec la Williams Renault. Riccardo Patrese qui porte le numéro 6.
Continuing the presentation of the grid after the Monegasque national anthem in honour of the presence of the Monegasque royal family. On the second row of the grid, Jean Alesi in the Tyrrell Ford, number 4, with a time of 1 minute 21.801 and making 4 different manufacturers on the first 4 places on the grid. Riccardo Patrese, his 13th time, I think, that he has competed here in the Williams Renault, this time number 6, with a time of 1 minute 22.026.
Vi ricordo che abbiamo ascoltato prima l'inno monegasco in saluto per la famiglia di Sua Altezza Serenissima il Principe Ranieri ed ora proseguiamo con la seconda fila che vede Jean Alesi che ha fatto un tempo straordinario, 1:21.801 per il giovane francese alla sua seconda stagione in Formula 1 sulla Tyrrell Ford. Al suo fianco abbiamo l'italiano Riccardo Patrese, salito sul podio più alto di Monaco nell'82, vi ricordo che ha vinto qui a Monte Carlo, recente vincitore di Imola a bordo di una Williams Renault.
So, wir mussten ganz kurz aufhören und unterbrechen, um die Nationalhymne für die zu Ehren der Fürstenfamilie, die gerade eingetroffen ist, hier anzuhören. Jetzt geht's weiter. Auf dem 3. Platz war Jean Alesi. Jean Alesi, die Überraschung überhaupt mit dem Tyrrell Ford. Er mit einer Zeit von 1:21.803 auf dem 3. Startplatz. Auf dem 4. Startplatz der Gewinner von Imola, Riccardo Patrese mit dem Williams Renault. Er hatte eine Zeit von 1:22.026.
La 3e ligne avec la McLaren Honda numéro 28, celle de Gerhard Berger. On se rappellera que l'année dernière, justement, ici, Gerhard Berger était absent à la suite donc de l'accident spectaculaire qu'il avait eu à Imola. Aujourd'hui, on le retrouve donc sur le circuit de Monaco avec le 5e chrono. À ses côtés, il y aura britannique. Il aura à ses côtés Pierluigi Martini, l'italien, avec la Minardi Ford sur donc le 8e chrono réalisé et donc la 4e ligne.
On the fourth row of the grid, Nigel Mansell in Ferrari number 2, the time of 1 minute 22.733, and Pierluigi Martini recovered from his Imola accident in the SCM Minardi Ford number 23, 1 minute 23.149.
Quarta fila per l'altro ferrarista, la vettura numero 2, quella di Nigel Mansell, per la nona volta qui sul circuito monegasco, il pilota inglese che ha fatto un tempo di 1:22.733, al suo fianco reduce e ancora zoppicante dopo l'incidente di Imola, con un ottimo tempo Pierluigi Martini sulla Minardi Ford SCM con un tempo di 1:23.149.
In der vierten Startreihe auf dem 7. Startplatz der zweite Ferrari, auch der Ferrari mit der Nummer 2. Nigel Mansell aus Großbritannien mit 1:22.733 hat er den 7. Startplatz. Er steht direkt neben Pierluigi Martini aus Italien, der auf dem SCM Minardi Ford mit einer Zeit von 1:23.149 auf dem 8. Startplatz steht.
5e ligne avec Emmanuel Pirot, l'italien sur la Dallara Ford. 9e chrono réalisé. Et à ses côtés, il aura le Brésilien 3 fois champion du monde avec la Benetton Ford numéro 20. On rappellera que Nelson Piquet donc, a été champion du monde 80, 83, 87. Il a obtenu une pole position ici en 80 à Monaco. Et c'est sa 11e participation pour ce résident monégasque, le Brésilien Nelson Piquet.
On the fifth row of the grid, Emmanuel Pirot equaling his best ever grid position in the BMS Dallara Ford, number 21, 1 minute 23.494. Beside him, Nelson Piquet, Benetton Ford, number 20, 1 minute 23.566.
In quinta fila troviamo il bravissimo Emanuele Pirro che con la BMS Dallara Ford della Scuderia Italia ha ottenuto un nono tempo 1:23.494. Al suo fianco con la vettura numero 20 il brasiliano Nelson Piquet, 3 volte campione del mondo, 11 volte presente sul circuito di Monaco sulla Benetton Ford con il tempo di 1:23.566.
Auf dem 9. Startplatz in der 5. Startreihe Emanuele Pirro auf dem BMS Dallara Ford mit einer Zeit von 1:23.494. Neben ihm steht Nelson Piquet, dreifacher Weltmeister auf dem Benetton Ford aus Brasilien mit einer Zeit von 1:23.566.
On the sixth row of the grid, Martin Donnelly in the Camel Lotus Lamborghini, number 12, 1 minute 23.600, and Andrea De Cesaris in second of the BMS Dallara Fords, number 22, 1 minute 23.613.
Sesta fila per Martin Donnelly sulla Camel Lotus Lamborghini che ha ottenuto il tempo di 1:23.600. Al suo fianco l'altro italiano Andrea De Cesaris a bordo di una BMS Dallara Ford che ha avuto il tempo di 1:23.613.
Sur cette 6e ligne, Martin Donnelly, le pilote britannique avec la Lotus Lamborghini. On voit également Andrea De Cesaris présent avec la Dallara. Andrea De Cesaris, pour sa part, c'est sa 8e présence ici à Monaco.
11. Startplatz für den ersten Camel Lotus Lamborghini Piloten, und zwar mit der Startnummer 12, Martin Donnelly mit einer Zeit von 1:23,600 auf dem 11. Startplatz in der 6. Reihe. Neben ihm Andrea De Cesaris aus Italien mit dem BMS Dallara Ford, seine Zeit 1:23,613.
On demande l'évacuation de la zone de départ. Évacuation de la zone de départ, s'il vous plaît.
Please clear the grid. If you have no job to do with one of the cars, please clear the grid.
Vi preghiamo di sgomberare la zona di partenza, per cortesia.
La suite avec la 7e ligne, Derrick Warwick et Stefano Modena seront donc sur cette 7e ligne.
On the 7th row of the grid, Derek Warwick in the Camel Lotus Lamborghini number 11, 1:23.656. And beside him, Stefano Modena, who finished third last year. In the Brabham Judd number 8, 1:23.920.
Settima fila per Derek Warwick sulla Camel Lotus Lamborghini con un tempo di 1:23.656. Al suo fianco Stefano Modena, che giunse terzo lo scorso anno sulla Brabham Judd con un tempo di 1:23.920.
Derek Warwick, der zweite Fahrer des Camel Lotus Lamborghini Teams, er steht auf dem 13. Startplatz in der 7. Startreihe mit einer Zeit von 1:23,656. Er steht direkt neben Stefano Modena mit dem Brabham Judd. Er ist 14. mit einer Zeit von 1:23,920.
8e ligne, le pilote japonais Suzuki qui est à sa première présence à Monaco, et la 3e présence pour Nannini qui est sur cette même ligne avec la Benetton.
On the 8th row of the grid, Aguri Suzuki in the Espola Rus Lola Lamborghini, number 30, 1:24.023. And beside him, Alessandro Nannini in the second of the Benetton Fords, number 19, 1:24.139.
Ottava fila per Aguri Suzuki sulla Espola Rus Lamborghini, che ha ottenuto il tempo di 1:24.023. Al suo fianco, la terza volta alla partenza qui a Monaco, Alessandro Nannini sulla Benetton Ford, 1:24.139 il tempo del pilota toscano.
Auf dem 15. Startplatz die Startnummer 30, Aguri Suzuki mit dem Espola Rus Lamborghini und einer Zeit von 1:24.023. Er steht vor Alessandro Nannini mit dem Benetton Ford und der Startnummer 19. Er steht auf dem 16. Startplatz mit einer Zeit von 1:24.139.
Le panneau 5 minutes, stop moteur, le panneau 5 minutes est présenté.
5 minutes to go, 5 minutes.
Mancano 5 minuti alla partenza.
Noch 5 Minuten und dann geht es los.
À signaler juste pour Suzuki qu'il le prendra donc sa voiture de réserve. Il ne sera pas donc avec la voiture de course. La suite avec la 9e ligne, Nicolas Larini, le pilote italien. Ce sont donc les deux Ligier Gitane à moteur Ford qui seront sur cette 9e ligne avec Philippe Alliot, donc le numéro 25 et 26.
On the 9th row of the grid, Nicola Larini in the Ligier Gitane Ford, number 25, 1:24.206 his time. And beside him, his own teammate Philippe Alliot, number 26, 1:24.294.
Nona fila per due compagni di squadra sulle Ligier Gitane Ford. Abbiamo Nicola Larini che ha fatto il tempo di 1:24.206. Al suo fianco Philippe Alliot con un tempo di 1:24.294.
Beide Ligier Gitane Ford in der 9. Startreihe. Nicola Larini auf dem 17. Startplatz mit einer Zeit von 1:24.206 hat er sich klassiert vor seinem Teamgefährten Philippe Alliot, der auf dem 18. Startplatz steht mit einer Zeit von 1:24.294.
La suite avec la 10e ligne, le pilote italien Barilla sur la Minardi, et également sur cette 10e ligne Gregor Wojtek, le pilote suisse que l'on retrouvera pour la première fois à Monaco.
On the 10th row of the grid, Paolo Barilla in the SCM Minardi Ford, number 24, 1:24.334. And beside him, Gregor Wojtek in the Monteverdi Onyx Ford, number 35.
The Monaco Grand Prix, something over 2,000 gear changes during the course of the race. James Hunt knows each one of them individually, I'm sure, and he's alongside our race commentator, Murray Walker.
Well, that lap with Ayrton Senna that you have just done was the fastest that anybody has ever done in the history of this magnificent race. 1:21.3. That is an average speed around this circuit of 91.5 miles an hour. And there's an enormous crowd here at Monaco as ever, and that crowd, a lot of whom will be in the Saint-Devote area, could be in for a real surprise and some great excitement very shortly, because when the Monaco Grand Prix starts, always the problem is is the grid going to get around the first corner? Because it is all too easy for them to collide and go through and hit each other. And as you can see, there's the Brazilian contingent there. There is the man who is in pole position, Ayrton Senna. Now, his problem is that just behind him, to his left, is his arch rival, Alain Prost, in the Ferrari, who has won 4 times here at Monaco. Senna has won twice. And right behind Senna is Jean Alesi, the sensational Frenchman in the Tyrrell Ford. And Alesi is driving for the first time here at Monaco, and there is going to be a real charging, thrusting mass of McLaren, Ferrari and Tyrrell, and that is the reigning world champion, Alain Prost, in the semi-automatic gearbox Ferrari, and incidentally he's got the gearbox programmed differently to that of Nigel Mansell. So, Senna the fastest, Prost very little slower, and the V12 Ferrari has got a lot of power, almost as much as Senna's V10 Honda powered car. And really, power doesn't matter as much here at Monaco as it does at many other circuits. Riccardo Patrese is 4th on the grid, and that is Gerhard Berger, who is 5th, so both the McLarens are in the top 6 places. And for that matter, so are both the Williams cars, because Thierry Boutsen is in 6th position on the grid. We have a camera on Ayrton Senna's car, and you're looking forwards towards the Saint-Devote corner through that camera at the present moment. And there's also, I'll tell you now, another camera in the cockpit of Senna's car looking back at him. So you may be seeing a bit of Senna himself looking forward and probably to a completely clear track in front of him as he has now. With Nigel Mansell 7th on the grid for this 78th lap, 1 lap longer than last year, Monaco Grand Prix.
Yes, there you see the yellow flags ahead of Senna's car. That's just while their mechanics are getting all their equipment off the grid. As soon as that's clear, now we're looking from that position, and away they go. That'll be a green flag waved. And now, look as they head into Saint-Devote. The problem with Saint-Devote, the corner that Murray spoke of earlier, the first corner, is that it's like a funnel and it narrows. And, of course, it is slightly curved. The entry is a bit blind, even with a big pack of cars. But we didn't see Saint-Devote as they will see it going in. We saw the exit of it as they come up the hill, the field to the Casino Square. This is over the hump, this is over the brow, and now they're onto the brakes in racing condition. Over the hump, the car goes light, and then you've got to set it up very carefully with a long left, quick left-hander that goes into Casino Square, that tightens up, and then they turn right through the square and down the hill to a Mirabeau, past the famous British watering hole, the Tip Top, where all the British fans go and behave like hooligans. This is the hill, Tip Top's on the right, just by this man with the yellow helmet. Marshall there. Hard on the brakes into, in some cases, people will be using first gear in the early part of the race with a heavy fuel load around the Mirabeau, which is the corner of the top. They're just coming into view, and then down to the old station hairpin, now called the Lowe's hairpin, where it's first gear again. Very slow, twisty complex to fight their way out onto the seafront. Past where Senna crashed, going onto the seafront a couple of years ago. Now into the old chicane, which has been slowed right down to a first gear corner because of the huge speeds being achieved through it when it was just a straightforward flick, and the danger with the harbour. On the right of that barrier as you look is of course the harbour. Now to the swimming pool complex, tight twisty section, quite a nice piece to drive. It's quick the first corner as you come into the swimming pool area, and then slows down, second gear for where they're coming around now. Short squirt down that straight, and then first gear for the Rascasse complex of hairpin. They're just turning into the right hand of where they're going now, disappearing is the Rascasse, and the tiny straight, and turning right yet again over a big bump. Difficulty with traction, a lot of wheel spin as the car goes over the bump because they're on the power, and then up to the start finish straight. So Senna leading the field round, yet another pole position, quite brilliantly done. In fact, he was on a quicker lap later in the session after the one that he did, and then right at the end of the lap he got balked by a slower car. So Senna leading the field onto the grid, take up his position. When they're all stopped, all in position, a green flag will be waved at the back of the grid, the red light will be on, and they'll be off.
And Ayrton Senna will undoubtedly try to do what he successfully did last year with a clear course in front of him, build up a cushion between himself and the rest of the competition as soon as the lights turn to green. Watch Prost, in particular, behind Ayrton Senna on the left in the blue and white car with the unique anhedral front wing, Jean Alesi. This could be his moment. At any moment now, the lights will go to red and then to green. It's going to be a race that's nearly 2 hours long. I'll be surprised if half the entry finishes it. And it's a good start by Alain Prost, an even better one by Senna. Alesi is in third position. Berger is challenging. Riccardo Patrese and Boutsen follow in the Williams. And it looks to me as though Capelli already at some Sanderbot is in trouble. Senna pulling away, then it is Prost. And you can see them now as they go round the left-hander at the Hotel de Paris. The next shot we'll see is as they come down. And Alesi is going through on the inside and taking Prost, and so is Berger. And that's it. Berger hits Prost. Are they going to stop the race? This is the right-hander just before the Mirabeau, and you can see that the thing that we all feared, a carambolage at the corner there, has happened. And it looks to me as though now Prost and Berger, two of the fancy men in the race, and Alesi's car on the right, are out of the Monaco Grand Prix. Well, there is 4 times winner Alain Prost. That is the pace car from the back coming through. Now they're going to try. Here's a replay. Now watch on the left, Alesi.
Alesi challenges Prost, gets alongside him, and that is reasonable enough. Prost is on the outside, and Alesi got round the corner, so that may have been somebody else. That was probably Nakajima who got stuck in there, and I think Alesi is hard charging. Yes, that was Nakajima. He popped up in the air and then down again, it looked like. Or was it a Brabham? That may be a Brabham back view. Looks more like a Brabham airbox to me. Difficult to see from here, I'm afraid, but certainly Prost and Berger out of the race as it starts, but of course they have spare cars. And Capelli, who we saw, and his car was on fire at the first corner. I saw flames coming out of the back of his car, so he'll be that's why he's rushing back, clutching his seat, ready to get in the spare car.
And meantime, I see no signs of the race being stopped at the present moment there. Yes, of course they have. They're touring in round the right-hander, coming out of the Rascasse while they get rid of the wreckage. And of course now, as Alain Prost with his helmet off looks at the wreckage, the question is he going to go back to the start to get the second? Well, there's Berger running away. Alain Prost shouting at the Austrian, not looking at all happy, and why should he? Well, the other car, incidentally, the Brabham that James identified, was that of Stefano Modena, the Italian driver who finished third in the Monaco Grand Prix. And the thing that we always fear when 26 cars all bunched together are fighting their way round this twisty circuit has happened. On the left then, Alain Prost Ferrari being wheeled backwards down the hill. Modena is back in the Brabham. Here's a replay with Alesi going through, pushing inside Prost. Now watch Berger cut through, and you'll see that the left front wheel is knocked right off the McLaren as he brakes, trying to avoid Prost, pushes the Ferrari round, which kicks up into the air, and Alesi is on his way.
Yes, well, you have to really say that was Berger's fault, that accident, because he was charging at a gap that was quite clearly closing and going to continue to close, because with Alesi having gone inside Prost, Prost was obviously going to get back onto the inside to cover that inside line from attack. He'd already done it. There was no hole there by the time Berger hit him, because his right front wheel was already on the curb. So really one's got to say that Berger was charging at a hole that really wasn't there by the time he got there. Here comes Alain Prost, a very fit, tough little fellow that he is, running back, ready to get into the spare car.
Now, is the second Ferrari, or rather the third Ferrari, set up for Alain Prost or for Nigel Mansell as Gerhard Berger runs back to get in the spare McLaren? Incidentally, Gerhard Berger, as you can see, is a very tall chap. I've talked about that a lot, particularly at the San Marino Grand Prix and before that at Phoenix. And now we're riding with Alessandro Nannini. Of course, this is a replay going down to the right-hander at the Metropole and leading on to the Mirabeau. Nannini in the Benetton, and you can see on the right there now, there is Modena's Brabham, the white and blue car. Cutting in front of us is Derek Warwick, number 11, who stops, as does Martin Donnelly. Modena threads his way forward, but the way is closed and he's had to stop. On the left, you see the Ferrari. This is live, of course, now. The Ferrari of Alain Prost, who's on his way back to get the spare car. The McLaren of Gerhard Berger. And that is going to be a big problem to remove Berger's McLaren, because it appeared to me that the whole of the left front suspension and wheel was removed in the accident, and that means lifting tackle is needed. I was talking just before we went to that shot about whether the Ferrari the third one would be set up for Alain Prost or Nigel Mansell. Let me explain. The Ferrari has a 6-speed semi-automatic gearbox, and in Prost's car, when changing down, 5th has been omitted. Thus he will go changing down from 6th to 4th to 3rd to 2nd to 1st, because you have to treat the gearbox like a motorcycle box. Here's another replay, and that is Capelli at Saint-Devote on the first lap in the Leighton House car. His teammate Gugelmin failed to qualify. Capelli is passed by JJ Leto and David Brabham, driving in his first Grand Prix. And incidentally, you can see the flames there at the back of Capelli's Leighton House car. And what a dreadful season the Leighton House team are having. My heart, and I'm sure that of every enthusiast, bleeds for them, because they are having just about everything go wrong that can go wrong. And it gives me an opportunity to say to Ian Phillips, who is the team manager and head man of the Leighton House team, and not at all well as Gerhard Berger runs in, get well soon, Ian, and get back to the Grand Prix scene. You'll be more than welcome. Gerhard Berger going for it. Prost, of course, is back there by now. And the difference between Mansell's car and Prost's car, that I still haven't finished telling you about, is that Mansell's car is programmed to go through all the gears. So if the car is set up for Prost, the spare one, he will be okay. If it's not, they will have to remind him, and I'm sure they will. And I can see Nigel Mansell now. He's just being wheeled past me to get up onto the grid again, as Gerhard Berger walks in. Not looking too happy. There's Jean Alesi, the man who sensationally led at Phoenix for a long time by passing Ayrton Senna in his Tyrrell Ford. Number 8 is the spare Brabham of Stefano Modena, so he is okay, back in the race. And I haven't had a chance to tell you so far that Alessandro Nannini, going out to form it up on the grid, had his engine go at Saint-Devote after he'd done just a few hundred yards. Here's another replay. Berger, you're looking at Berger, cutting inside Alain Prost, right up against the wall, no room for him. Off goes the left front wheel and the suspension. Bits fly all over the place. Riccardo Patrese miraculously moves to the left with Boutsen behind him. There is Mansell, that is Martini, and behind Martini, number 21 is the Dallara of Emanuele Pirro, who was starting higher up on the grid than he's ever been before, with 2 exceptions, I just hastily remembered. And now they're all coming to a standstill. This is a replay. There are the 2 Ligiers of Alio and Larini. The footwork car is the Arrows of Alex Caffey. His teammate Michele Alboreto failed to qualify. And that's Nakajima in the blue and white second Tyrrell Ford. Wojtek, number 35, in the Monteverdi Onyx. And now we're back again live, looking at the exit to the swimming pool.
Yes, well, I've been rushing around just checking things out, and we've got an interesting and rather unfortunate situation over spare cars for Prost and Berger, in that Ferrari's spare car, the Ferrari team swap around and take it in turns for their drivers to have the spare car because of their different sizes and shapes. And the spare Ferrari, it's Nigel Mansell's turn to have the spare covering him this weekend, and that's a major job and debatable as to whether Ferrari can get it done properly in time to get the car to fit, make all the changes necessary to fit Prost. Unlikely, and the situation within the McLaren team is even worse in that to get the job done to change the spare car from fitting Senna to fitting Gerhard Berger, not that even Berger's own car fits him, but they certainly won't be able to get that done properly, even to the Berger spec that they've got, which doesn't fit the driver, which is another matter and a very serious one within the team. But on changing it, the best I think either team will be able to do is to try and do a bodge and get the most important changes done and just try and get their drivers out. But I think it's fair to say that neither of them is going to be comfortable. And this, of course, brings us to a major issue on safety for Grand Prix racing, and that is the subject of cockpit size, because it's been highlit by, there is Prost already in the spare car, moving it round, and Berger we have just seen drive down the pit road in the spare McLaren, and Capelli also in the spare car after he wasn't anything to do with the accident. But if you remember, Capelli had a nice sort of conflagration going at the back of his car, we noticed, going into the first corner, so that car must have he must have lit the car up when he fired it up on the grid to do that. But so they're now taking those spare cars round to the grid, warming up the tyres, doing their warm-up lap. The rest of the field is now pretty much assembled on the grid in front of us, and shortly we'll get a countdown. We haven't been told how long the countdown will be yet, and then we will go through the rigmarole again, and let's hope they behave themselves this time. Now, going back to the safety problem over cockpits, which is very serious, it's been highlighted by the McLaren's team's lack of response to Gerhard Berger's problems in the McLaren cockpit. Now, the situation is this. Here we have the team that claims to be the top Grand Prix team in the world, and as far as results are concerned, that claim is quite justified. But here we are, the 4th Grand Prix of the season, and Gerhard Berger's car still doesn't fit him. Now, when you're paying somebody in excess of $5 million a year to drive him, it seems pretty stupid to me to then not be able to give him the tool of the trade to do the job, because there is one thing that is for certain in racing cars, and that is that they are very difficult to drive when you're perfectly comfortable. When you're in any way uncomfortable and not seated correctly therein, they are impossible to give of one's best and to drive properly. It is, and that is an absolute fact. Now, McLarens know this, and if they can't respond, this is really a serious matter. Obviously, to build a new chassis, it's difficult, and they knew about the problem from last November when Berger started doing testing for them, but they maybe shoveled that under the carpet because, of course, they were able then during testing to run an illegal car from a racing point of view by moving the pedals forward ahead of the axle line, which is how Berger ran all winter, and was comfortable in the car for testing because, of course, but then, of course, they had to move the pedals back towards him, thereby cramping his legs, and the result was that he's been extremely uncomfortable in the car, and the team seemed, for whatever reason, to be reluctant to respond in a positive way, because it really is a very serious situation and not a good indictment for the team.
Yeah, as you watch the Benetton there, and for that matter Berger's car, that is Nannini's car that's being brought in, and there is Berger's. I understand that McLaren are certainly giving very serious consideration to making a bigger car, in which case both Berger and Senna would have to use it. But there is one point that's worth making about the size problem that Prost will have vis-a-vis Mansell. I remember casting my mind back, there's Gerhard Berger looking very unhappy as he tries to accommodate himself in the chassis which is set up for Ayrton Senna. But I remember in the French Grand Prix last year, Berger took over the spare car after there was a gigantic crash at the start, just as there has been here. And Nigel Mansell had a problem at the crash and had to get into Berger's car. It was all very complicated, but Mansell then drove an absolutely magnificent race. That car won't be going very far now, except on the back of that truck. And so we now have Ayrton Senna sitting confidently in pole position for the second start of what I'm sure will be a shortened race. I don't know what the new length will be as yet because we haven't been told. Alain Prost will be in the Ferrari set up for Nigel Mansell, and Jean Alesi, who looks as though he's got through unscathed, is still there in third position on the grid.
Yes, well, I picked up, Murray, you said that McLarens are contemplating building a tub. Well, contemplating building a tub at the fourth race of the season, when it was instantly evident from the first one that that was what was required, I call a scandalous lack of response, and thoroughly irresponsible to the needs of their driver, who, after all, they pay a lot of money to do a job, and now they're not allowing him to do the job. There's Alain Prost talking to Jean-Marie Belest of FISA and brain surgery fame. But going back to the problem of cockpits, it really is very serious that Belest, the man who you just saw, who makes the rules, or along with his committees and things, has not yet decreed that there should be a minimum size for cockpits, because we've got to a situation now where obviously it is a huge advantage. In fact, the best racing car would be one that doesn't need a driver at all, because the aerodynamics of the car, the driver takes up a lot of space, and he's a very bad piece of equipment aerodynamically for the car. So the designers are always trying to make the cars smaller and smaller and smaller, and even now the midgets, the Alain Prost of this world, designers are now making the cockpits too small for them, and small drivers already are complaining of getting cramped because they haven't got freedom of movement in the cockpit in the car. Now this is plainly extremely dangerous. A driver with cramp, or a driver who is restricted physically, cannot control these cars properly. They're extremely fast, and this really is a dangerous thing. Berger was saying to me this morning that all he wanted was to move his pedals forward 5 centimetres, which would make the car so much safer to drive that it would net and overall be much safer than having his feet behind the front axle line, because at least he'd be able to control the car and therefore be less likely to have an accident. So at the same time, as I say, no matter how small the driver is, the designer will still try and make a car that's too small for him, and because of the competitive nature of the business, therefore regulations have to be introduced, and if they're going to introduce them, they might as well make the cockpit a decent size, because it's very easy to make a cockpit smaller by putting a driver in, but you can't make a cockpit bigger if the car isn't bigger.
Yes, typical of McLaren's forward-looking, actually, is the fact that they've already invested a vast amount of money in young Alan McNish, who won the last Formula 3000 champion, and must be smaller even than Alain Prost that we're looking at the present moment. Now, I am told that the race is going to last for 78 laps, which is the full distance, and it means to say, of course, that the teams will have been allowed to top up the fuel tanks of their cars on the grid. Although fuel is not as major a problem at Monaco as it is at most other events. Those are the eyes of the winner of the last Grand Prix, Riccardo Patrese, in the Williams Renault, with Anne Bradshaw holding the umbrella for him. And they're actually in a very strong position. I was talking to Bernard Dudot, who is the designer of the Renault V10 engine, just before the race began, and he said he was extremely pleased with the way things had gone in practice. Williams had a bit of a trouble with an anti-roll bar and a broken CV joint in the warm-up this morning, but that's been fixed. And at Monaco, this enormous crowd, unlike you, will not be too clear about what is happening, because we can see the cars on the grid. They can't. That hasn't made any difference to the atmosphere or to the fact that Senna is in pole position. Then Alain Prost in the Ferrari, followed by Jean Alesi, third on the grid, second row. With second row, Riccardo Patrese. Gerhard Berger, we say again, in an ill-fitting McLaren. The second Williams Renault of Thierry Boutsen, ahead of Nigel Mansell, who didn't go well in practice by his standards. But he's not too bothered. He says he's quite happy to sit back, knowing that there are going to be all sorts of problems during the race, because 78 laps here are going to take nearly 2 hours to go. There is Nigel Mansell conferring with his teammate Alain Prost. And incidentally, another point about Nigel Mansell, he was reported as having made some very harsh remarks about Gerhard Berger after Mansell had spun at some 190 miles an hour, Prost sprinting back to his car after Mansell had spun at Imola. But Nigel says we're the best of mates now, no problems. Any remarks I may have made were made in the heat of the moment. And you're now looking then at row 10 of the grid. Paolo Barilla, the Italian in the Minardi. Gregor Wojtek, the Swiss driver, who has actually qualified quicker than his teammate, JJ Leto. The start was supposed to have been about 3 minutes ago. So there's obviously been a bit of unexpected delay. I think there's about 5 minutes now. There's all sorts of alterations. I can tell you that Stefano Modena in the Brabham has changed a front wing, and he's taken the opportunity also to change the air scoops on the car. And now Jean Alesi is quite consciously divorcing himself from everybody around him, looking straight ahead. He's got it all to do again. He was trying to take Alain Prost after the drop down from Casino Square into that right-hander before Lowe's Corner, just before the Mirabeau Hotel. And even here at Monaco, cars, believe it or not, are doing, in fact, where that crash happened, they're doing just about 170 miles an hour. Not on the actual corner, of course, but certainly on the approach to it. His Serene Highness Prince Rainier of Monaco is here in the royal box that you were just looking at to witness, as he always does, the Monaco Grand Prix. And this circuit is one of only two in the whole 16-race World Championship Grand Prix series that were used before the war, the other one being Monza. And at this very circuit, although there have been one or two changes, like the tunnel under Lowe's Hotel, at this very circuit, people saw the great Mercedes-Benz and Auto Union teams racing. They saw drivers like Tazio Nuvolari, Aki Lavazzi, Rudolf Caracciola, Bernd Rosamar. There's the Brazilian contingent, and as ever, Ayrton Senna has got this gigantic following of his countrymen and countrywomen, and a lot of them are here at Monaco. The weather conditions, we had a report just before the race began that things were going to be okay for the race. We had a very, very heavy downpour for the Formula 3 event yesterday, which actually caused the race to be stopped. And I can tell you from my personal body temperature that I wouldn't be at all surprised if it doesn't rain again this afternoon, because it feels just like yesterday. And if it does rain, that will be just as much of a problem for the cars and drivers, or almost, as the crash that they had on the first lap. In the middle of your picture now, one of the many cranes which are dotted around the circuit to lift stricken cars off. That chaps have had some work to do already in this meeting, because in the Formula 3 race several cars had to be lifted off there. There's Jean-Marie Balestre, the autocratic Frenchman who rules motorsport with a rod of iron, just gone out of your picture. And that is the complete cockpit and engine cover of, I can't tell you whether it's Mansell. Oh, it's Prost Ferrari. Prost Ferrari. There is the Frenchman. The man with the biggest nose in the Grand Prix world, who actually once returned a hire car after they'd had a race in it and it had been very badly smashed up. And when the girl at the hire car desk complained about it, he said, it was not my fault, look what it's done to my nose. And there's the photographer's stand. And they're going to be all agog. It looks to me as though that is at Saint-Devote. Ayrton Senna, the world champion of 1988, twice a winner at Monaco 1989 and 1987, and he missed 1988 because he went off when he was very much in the lead. Incidentally, there's no camera on the spare McLaren, which Gerhard Berger is in, and so we and they, more importantly, have got it all to do again. 78 laps. Alain Prost gets away first, but of course Ayrton Senna will take up station in front of him. And this is the parade lap. This is not, needless to say, the start of the race, or that chap with the green flag wouldn't be standing there. And so each lap of Monaco is 2.6 1.068 miles long. There is Berger, Boutsen, Mansell, Martini, and left on the grid is Emanuele Pirro, and that means to say that the unfortunate Roman, who was going to start to equal his highest ever position, 9th on the grid, is going to have to get away on the back of the grid last, and David Brabham was late away too.
Yes, and Pirro, who we're looking at now, is yet another driver who's having serious cockpit problems. That car is too small for him, and it looks like they're pushing it off the grid, so maybe he's going to get into the spare car and start from the pit road. That would suggest that that car was hors de combat. Here's his teammate, Cesaris. Now through the tunnel. They're building up some 170 miles an hour as they get onto the brakes at the top of the hill for the chicane. Well, the old chicane now turned into a sort of complicated, very slow hairpin to slow the cars down with the danger of them going to the harbour if they have any trouble at the chicane as it used to be. So, Ayrton Senna, the pole man, leading the field around quite quickly there, but he'll slow it right down from the swimming pool complex on, as he's doing now, to allow the field to bunch right up. Remember, as they come to the grid now, they will be sitting, or rather the front people on the grid will want Senna to bring them around so to keep them sitting on the grid for as short a time as possible. This is Berger's car, shot from Gerhard Berger's spare McLaren. We have no way of knowing how well it fits him, but seeing that even his own race car doesn't fit him, and this was set up for Senna, we know that to change the cockpits properly takes something like an hour, and they haven't had that amount of time. One's got to say that one has got to make the assumption that Gerhard Berger is very uncomfortable in that car and is going to be in a lot of physical trouble if he's going to go the distance. So he'll have problems. Here, coming onto the grid now, remember this time that the clutches, they won't want to get too much heat in the clutches. The clutches, everybody's clutch has already done one start, apart from those people in spare cars, and the ferocity of a start when you've got 700 horsepower being forced through a small clutch plate, they don't last very long. They don't like more than one.
Let me quickly correct things. You will have noticed that Berger's car has got a camera. Ayrton Senna on the left, Prost on the right, Alesi behind Senna, Patrese behind Prost. Is Senna going to do it again and get away cleanly? Watch. Yes, he does. And again, Alesi sprints up alongside Prost. Prost is second, Alesi is third, Berger is fourth, Patrese is fifth, Martini is ahead of Boutsen is sixth, Capelli is in trouble again, Senna is already breaking away a bit, Martini is sprinting up the hill in front of Nigel Mansell into Casino Square. Out of it, there's Prost, Alesi, Berger, Patrese, Boutsen, Martini, Mansell, and again Alesi tried to take Prost in exactly the same place, but this time they're round, thank heavens, into Lowe's corner. It's Senna, Prost, Alesi, Berger, Patrese, Boutsen, Martini into the tunnel now, up to 160 miles an hour. Senna is building up a cushion.
It's very important to Prost to keep Alesi behind him in the first couple of laps, because we know, and already Alesi dropped back a bit because the Pirelli race tyres that Alesi is using are not as good as their qualifying tyres, and one would not expect Alesi to be able to run with the leaders, but if he can get in front of Prost, he can hold him up, and Prost won't want that.
And it's not happening at the present moment. Senna is bursting away just as he did last year. Prost has got him inside. Alesi is right under the rear wing of the Ferrari, thrusting to get through, because Alesi has got a very nimble car with about the right sort of power-to-weight ratio. Berger is in fourth position. Then it is Patrese, Boutsen right with him, Martini, Mansell, Piquet, and Martin Donnelly well up as Ayrton Senna absolutely rips through at the end of lap 1 into Saint-Devote, climbing the hill now, and they're building up to 170 miles an hour on the hill. Prost is still second, but dropping back. Alesi, Berger, then the two Williams, and Martini is being challenged by Nigel Mansell, who was trying to take the Minardi as they went into the left-hander before the Hotel de Paris. And it looks to me as though Alain Prost is very much holding up Alesi. You can see the way Senna is pulling away. Now it's second, third and fourth absolutely together. Prost, Alesi, Berger, then the two Williams. into the tunnel again. And the sparks flying, showing that there's a low ride height and a very heavy fuel load into the new chicane. Now there is the gap. That is Senna leading on lap 2 in this 78-lap race.
Yes, I get the feeling that Prost is playing himself in fairly comfortably. I think he likes to take 3 or 4 laps to build himself up to his full speed, which is keeping a lazy climbing, and of course Berger attacking from behind that.
Yeah, make a note of these lap times if you're interested. From the standing start, Senna was leading by 2.5 seconds. That's a tremendous gap. 1 minute 32.75, and the times will come down. Mansell fighting against Martini. Second, third, fourth go through. Alesi third, Berger behind him. And Berger, of course, if he has got a comfort problem, will not find it as bad now as he will later on in what is going to be a very long 2-hour race. And still the 2 Williams of Riccardo Patrese and Thierry Boutsen are together in 5th and 6th places. Now, down to the corner that claimed the cars on the first lap of the first start. Berger gets a wheel up on the curb, and now the gap between Senna leading, there he is, and Alain Prost, you saw, was nearly 4 seconds. And that is an enormous lead at this stage of the race. They're on lap 3. Race order: Senna, Prost, Alesi, Berger, Patrese, Boutsen, 7th Martini, 8th Mansell, 9th Piquet, 10th at Donnelly, 11th De Cesaris in 12th position, Derek Warwick. So both the Lotus cars are in the top 12. Notwithstanding the fact that they had to make an engine change on Donnelly's car, put a new Lamborghini V12 in after the warm-up, and that normally takes 6 hours, and they had about 3 to do it. So there's another record. And Berger is pushing Alesi hard, and Prost easing away now a fraction. And Jean Alesi is in his first Monaco Grand Prix. He has driven here in Formula 3, but it's a very different kettle of fish to have 650 horsepower behind you. And now Ayrton Senna has extended his lead to just over 4 seconds with a lap in 1 minute 27.97 compared with the lap record 1 minute 25.5 put up by Alain Prost last year. Prost, Alesi, Berger, second, third, fourth. Senna in front of them, out of Casino Square. That terrifying drop down to the Mirabeau. And so you have a Ford V8 DFR powered car between the V12 Ferrari, and that is Stefano Modena in the Brabham. It looks to me as though his race, yes, he's pulling in the so-called start and finish straight. It's anything but straight, but Modena's race is over already, and this is lap 4.
Yes, Berger will now have to start actively looking for a way round Alesi, because I'm sure that Alesi is going to get a struggle to maintain the pace now, although it doesn't look like it. It's interesting to watch the comparison between his driving and Prost. He catches Prost on all the fiddly bits of the circuit, particularly here at the Rascasse. You will see in a moment as we look at Senna. So we're over 4 seconds of lead, and he's pulled quite closely up to Prost. He also catches him in the Casino Square and round the complex that leads out onto the seafront. And tremendous bottoming there from Alesi under braking.
What a great fight for second place. Meantime, Senna is 4.3 seconds ahead of Prost with another new fastest lap, 1 minute 27.623, and that is 2 seconds slower than the lap record. And the Williams are keeping Berger in sight. Riccardo Patrese, 5th, just ahead of his teammate. Round lows, and the 2 Williams cars are actually closing on Berger. You can see that visually. Prost, Alesi, Berger. We follow the McLaren round. There are the 2 Williams with their Renault V10 engines, and Prost is definitely pulling away now from the 3rd position man Jean Alesi, and we're riding with Gerhard Berger. And in front of Berger is Alesi. Now they're dropping down to the Tabac, or at least what was the Tabac. There's Alesi. 3rd Berger, round the swimming pool section. And they do this in 2nd gear. It's about 40, 50 miles an hour on the actual corners, and then the foot hard goes hard down sorry, what am I talking about? 80 miles an hour around the swimming pool, down to the Rascasse, second gear. Senna goes through. Let's see what the gap is now as Alain Prost follows him into lap 5 of this 78-lap race. The gap is steady, and actually now Alain Prost is going marginally faster than Senna. It's 1/10 of a second only, but he's quicker.
Yes, I get the feeling that Senna has already cut his pace back a little bit, because he's certainly going a lot quicker than Prost, but Prost has been holding him now. I think really at the end of the second lap, Berger had already, as it were, clicked it back a gear, and Alesi still hanging on, and hanging on very well, because I'm just looking down the list of the next Pirelli runner, Pierluigi Martini, and he is not going nearly as quickly. Alesi doing very well indeed. He also catches Prost quite substantially around the swimming pool section, which we're just coming to. We go through this one, then the Tabac, which is the quick left-hander. It's quick by Monte Carlo standards, so Prost going into the Tabac now. And Berger there was having a look down the inside of Alesi. Not an easy place to pass. Prost through the swimming pool. Now it's here, the second half of the swimming pool complex, that Tracy seems to haul him in. Alesi hauls him in a little bit. But Prost further ahead this lap, and Patrese maybe lost a little bit of time as he was busy covering his rear from the attack of Gerhard Berger.
So now race leader Ayrton Senna has completed 6 laps. He's now nearly 5 seconds ahead of Prost. He's just gone round in the first lap under 1 minute 27, 1:26.296. Senna is really pushing hard to build up the biggest possible gap between himself and the battle for second, third and fourth, and definitely Riccardo Patrese with Donnelly going out of the race. Martin Donnelly retiring from the race and turns into the pits in the Lotus Lamborghini. That's rotten luck in his first Monaco Grand Prix, but Riccardo Patrese is starting to catch Berger. There is Berger, and there is Patrese, the winner of the San Marino Grand Prix. We go round into the tunnel with the Williams, and Boutsen is still with his teammate. Great order, lap 7, Senna. 5 seconds ahead of Prost, who is 1.2 seconds ahead of Alesi, who has got Berger right behind him. There is the Frenchman in 4th position, being caught by Riccardo Patrese is Gerhard Berger. So Boutsen is behind his teammate, and then Mansell is 7th, Martini is 8th, Piquet is 9th, De Cesaris is 10th, Warwick is 11th, Nannini is 12th. And that is Jean Alesi. There is Riccardo Patrese, behind him Boutsen. They're coming out of the Rascasse into the start and finish section, as opposed to straight under the bridge up to Saint-Devote, starts to climb. And 25-year-old Jean Alesi, who finished 2nd in the first Grand Prix of the year at Phoenix, is 3rd here. You can see that the front wings, very low set, the new anhedral front wings in this Harvey Postlethwaite designed car, with the aerodynamics by Jean-François Migeot, ex-Ferrari, are striking sparks off the tarmac, so low set are they. Round and now down to the Portier, 2nd gear, accelerate away, 3rd, 4th, 5th into the tunnel, 160 miles an hour, coming up to 165 out of it and down to the chicane.
Yes, there's been a lot of talk in the paddock by the non-cognoscenti, but there's like people who really ought to know, who are all wondering why this, thinking that the dihedral front wing is making the Tyrrell so quick. Of course, the dihedral front wing is only like that to allow the air to pass to the splitter, and the splitter is what's doing the is the improvement on aerodynamics. That is only to keep out of the way of the splitter, because underneath the car is the trick. And the dihedral front wing, which anhedral, whatever you like, it really doesn't matter. The funny front wing is purely to flow the air. It's nothing to do with the operation, the shape of it at all. It's just to get it out of the way.
And out of the way it is, and it's not helping Alesi as much as it did earlier on, because now Alain Prost is pulling away.
Yes, and down the field a little bit in 7th place, Nigel Mansell is really flying. Mansell, you saw just now, he was captioned up as having fastest lap of the race. That he still has, and he was stuck behind the Minardi for a little while. He's got a clear run, and he's catching Boutsen and Patrese quite fast.
Lap 9 then, race order as you look at the 4th place man, Gerhard Berger, chasing Alesi is Senna leading by 4.5 seconds. Prost second, then Alesi and Berger, Patrese and Boutsen still 5th and 6th, being caught by Nigel Mansell. In 7th position, it is Piquet. Martini has gone into the pits. Andrea De Cesaris is in 8th position. Derek Warwick is up into 10th. Nannini is 11th. Aguri Suzuki, the Japanese driver in the Lola Lamborghini, is in 12th position. And the legend tells you that between Jean Alesi and Gerhard Berger, it doesn't really matter, you can see what the gap is. And between Patrese and Boutsen. And there was Nigel Mansell. And Nigel said, as I said earlier on, he wasn't at all worried about the fact that he was only starting in 7th position on the grid, because he was prepared to take his time, study points, and go for it later on in the race. Well, by that time, of course, Ayrton Senna will be long gone. Already at this stage in the race, it's looking like another victory for him. And this is Gerhard Berger that we're riding with in 4th position, going down to Lowe's hairpin. And if we go back to his race car camera, it will be Jean Alesi's blue and white Tyrrell 4 that you will be seeing in front of you. If we had a backward-facing camera, you would be able to see Riccardo Patrese, Ayrton Senna, 1 minute 25.5, 87 miles an hour, and that exactly matches Alain Prost's lap record from last year. And you can expect to see, before very much longer, a new lap record as Ayrton Senna continues to keep the hammer down and the fuel load continues to lighten. Round the swimming pool then. Martin Donnelly has definitely retired. Pierluigi Martini has been into the pits. Alesi, Berger, Patrese. Patrese is pulling away now from Thierry Boutsen. And Senna all the time is building a lead, as is his way. He's now 6.5 seconds ahead of Prost. He is lapping faster than anybody. He's gone round now in under 1 minute 26. Jean Alesi is actually faster than Prost, but of course there is an enormous horsepower difference between Alesi's nimble Tyrrell and Prost's V12 Ferrari, and although I said horsepower doesn't make as much difference at Monaco as it does at other circuits, it obviously makes a difference, particularly here, into and out of the tunnel. Berger, 4th position. An enormous amount of extra lighting has been put into the tunnel this year, where before there were only about half a dozen banks of lights. This time there is an enormously extended bank of lights on every pillar. 14 seconds, 15 nearly, between leader Ayrton Senna, 6th man Thierry Boutsen on lap 11 out of 78, and there are still going to be a lot of cars retiring from this Monaco Grand Prix. We have already had Martin Donnelly out of the race, and Pierluigi Martini seems to be retiring. He hasn't done so yet, but the problem is handling. In his own words, I'm having a problem in staying on the track. That's Patrese, the most experienced driver in Grand Prix racing. This is his 196th Grand Prix. And when he gets to the British Grand Prix, he will be celebrating a double century of Grand Prix, and nobody has got anywhere near that many before. So Patrese drops down towards the Mirabeau. And there you can see Gerhard Berger, 3.8 seconds in front of him. So Patrese is actually dropping back a bit, and on lap 12, as you look at the man in 5th position ahead of him, Ayrton Senna leads Prost by 7.2 seconds. Alesi is still just behind the Ferrari in 3rd place, ahead by 1 second of Gerhard Berger, 4th. Patrese is 3.6 seconds in 5th position behind Berger, and 2 seconds ahead of Thierry Boutsen, who is 1.6 seconds ahead of Nigel Mansell. You're looking at Boutsen and Mansell seems to be closing the gap. He's just gone round in 1 minute 26.56, which is faster than everybody except Senna and, significantly, Alesi. Now you're watching Boutsen, the Belgian, winner of 2 Grand Prix last year in Canada and Australia. And now there's Nigel Mansell.
Well, Alesi does have a slight tyre disadvantage. It's certainly not showing at the moment. He's going extremely well in 3rd place. Mansell was, having got clear of what I'd call the 2nd group, has come through very well and is now on Boutsen's tail. I saw him coming through there. And of course, remember always just how difficult it is to pass on this twistiest of circuits.
And I can tell you that Martin Donnelly's problem was not Lamborghini engine problem, but a gearbox problem. And now, as you look at Nigel Mansell in 7th position, there are yellow flags waving in the start and finish area, and I'm looking frantically to see if I can spot it, and that is the answer, because being pushed off the course into the pits is Nicola Larini's Ligier car, and they obviously want to get that out of the way because Ayrton Senna goes through now to complete another lap, which is his 13th, and it certainly looks to me as though the Brazilian, having won in a Lotus with active suspension in 1987 and a McLaren in 1989, is on his way unbeatably to his 3rd Monaco Grand Prix victory. The question at the moment in the first 7 is how Boutsen is going to stave off Nigel Mansell, because the Englishman in the Scarlet Ferrari going round the left-hander at the Hotel de Paris is soon going to be tucked under the rear wing of the Williams Renault, but then he's got to get past it, and that is a very different kettle of fish altogether. Down to Lowe's hairpin, 2nd gear. They look as though they're going very slowly, and they are going very slowly, 30 miles an hour, but it's jolly quick if you're sitting round in a car going round now through the tunnel. There we go, Boutsen, Mansell, and it's Senna leading. Prost 2nd, 7.6 seconds behind. Alesi 3rd, Berger 4th, Patrese 5th, Boutsen 6th, Mansell 7th, 8th is Piquet, 9th De Cesaris, 10th Warwick, 11th Nannini, 12th Felipe Alio, 13th Barilla, 14th Nakajima, followed by Capelli, Cappy, Wojtek, Bernard and Leto. And Ayrton Senna goes through now up to Saint-Devant. I wish we could see some of the pictures through his race car camera, but they're being denied us at the present moment. You saw what it was like. Ah, thank you very much. Here he is. This is the headshot. This is the man. World champion of 1988, Ayrton Senna from Brazil, with the neck of his overalls undone, and you can see his scarf flapping a bit in the enormously powerful breeze that's getting at it. He goes round Lowe's, down to the Portier, into the tunnel again. And that's where he went off. That very point was where he went off in 1988 and lost the Monaco Grand Prix to Alain Prost in the closing stages. Got out of his car, walked back to his apartment, which was just a few yards away, and disappeared for the whole of the evening, much to the disgust and annoyance of all the media and the McLaren team. Well, he's having no such problem here. V10 Honda power behind him, and the Japanese technicians who know every beat of that engine from the telemetry, which is going through to the bank of extremely sophisticated machines and screens in the McLaren pit, are watching Senna's every move. Everything is recorded so that they can review his race progress from the technical point of view afterwards, and I don't think if his progress now is anything to go by, they're going to be too unhappy with the result. Round the Hotel de Paris, That is, in my opinion, the most exciting place in Grand Prix racing to watch. The exit from Casino Square, where the rear tyre of the car, and it's doing about 130 miles an hour as it goes over the crest, nearly kisses the Armco. And Ayrton Senna is now 8.7 seconds ahead of Prost, notwithstanding the fact that Prost's previous lap, 1:26.2, was faster than that of Ayrton Senna. There's the gap, and you can see Alesi is 1.2 seconds behind Alain Prost, and just about 6/10 ahead of Gerhard Berger, who is 5.5 seconds ahead of Riccardo Patrese, who in turn is 1.7 seconds ahead of his teammate Thierry Boutsen. This is Patrese, and there are the Renault technicians, or there were the Renault technicians, who, just as the Honda men watch what is happening to their engine in Berger and Senna's car, the Renault men watch what is happening to their engine in Patrese and Boutsen's cars. Here's the winner of the San Marino Grand Prix, his third Grand Prix victory in his long career. Riccardo Patrese, driving better this season and last season than ever before. But now I hope they stay with what's coming next, because you saw a flash of Nigel Mansell right on the tail of Thierry Boutsen. Look back. Now there is Boutsen in 6th position, and then Mansell. Well, we're doing a tour of Monaco with Riccardo Patrese. It's quick, it's interesting, it's exciting, but it's not as quick and as exciting as the battle between Boutsen and Mansell just behind, with Piquet now in 8th position, De Cesare is 9th, Warwick 10th, Nannini in 11th position. Things are getting pretty spread out, and Capelli is out of the race. He has stopped and withdrawn, so another problem for Leighton House. Gugelmin didn't start. This is Berger, Alesi ahead, and now we're going down to the Tabac. Out of it, round the swimming pool complex. They're doing about 85 miles an hour. Left, right, right, left. Gerhard Berger, 4th position. And one has to say, whatever the reason, and I've said it before, that Gerhard Berger does not seem to be mirroring Ayrton Senna in the McLaren team to the extent that Alain Prost did.
Well, and a new fastest lap there for Ayrton Senna, and I think that's a new lap record. 25.39 for Ayrton Senna, and I'm sure that'll come down as the race progresses, and that's just taken his lead to just over 9 seconds. So I still get the feeling that Senna is not pushing for a big lead. He's just driving away comfortably, slowly, turning in the odd quick lap when he needs to, and otherwise matching his pace backwards. Berger's pace to relative to Senna, I think it's very difficult to be a judge, because Berger, first of all, wasn't even comfortable in his own car. He's in the spare car today, and when you're not comfortable in a racing car, you cannot drive it properly. So we haven't yet seen Berger's form this season, because ever since the season started, as we discussed before, while waiting for the restart, the team have as yet failed to come up with a car that can fit Gerhard Berger, and we feel that with the 4th race of the season already underway, this is really a disgraceful response by a top team when they knew about it all winter, and instead of doing something about it during the winter when they could have done, they bodged the pedals by running them in an illegal position for safety regs, which allowed the testing to get done, and just meant that it was a disaster for Berger when they started racing. So Alain Prost still pushing away. He's put in his fastest lap of the race. He's now a bit over 1.5 seconds ahead of Alesi, but that's no big lead here. You can see the gap visually. Alesi can probably haul that in, but Prost has got a push, and Berger is keeping up with the group, but hasn't looked very threatening. He looked threatening for a couple of laps behind Alesi, but he's really not pressing at the moment.
Down to the Mirabeau again, and this may look pretty static to you, this battle for 2nd position, and it is static, to be absolutely pedantic about it, but don't forget that these 3 drivers with 3 different engines in 3 very different cars, Prost in the V12 Ferrari, Alesi in the V8 powered Tyrrell, and Berger in the V10 Honda-powered McLaren are absolutely on the edge of adhesion all the way around this convoluted circuit, which twists and turns and rises and falls around Monaco. And as you look at Jean Alesi, and if ever there was a star of the future, never mind a star of the present, this is the man. And Alesi, who was looked after by the very astute Eddie Jordan, was allegedly proposed to have a 3-year contract with Ken Tyrrell, but that was turned down last year. Alesi's contract with Tyrrell runs out at the end of this season. I imagine that Ken Tyrrell will have some sort of a hold over him. But anyway, it's going to be very interesting to see where Alesi ends up next year. There he is in third position at the present moment. And if he stays with Ken Tyrrell, of course, he will have a V10 Honda engine next year, because Ken, at the end of last season, very proudly announced that in 1991 the Tyrrell team would be Honda V10 powered. Alesi rolls the Tyrrell round the left-hander at lows. The gap between himself and Alain Prost is 1.8 seconds. It is not reducing at all. Their last lap time was absolutely identical. 1 minute 26.011. So to the nearest thousandth of a second, Alesi and Prost went round the 2.068 mile circuit of Monaco in an identical time. David Brabham, unseen by you, has been into the pits and has changed tyres, and according to my information has actually withdrawn. We'll check by watching our lap chart on whether David Brabham is still going or not, but Prost and Alesi are still hard at it. Ayrton Senna is now on his 21st lap, and he's leading Alain Prost as Alesi comes through in third position by 9.75 seconds. And David Brabham has definitely retired from his first Grand Prix, having succeeded superbly in qualifying for it. It was only his second effort, and to qualify for Monaco first time out is a very considerable achievement. And incidentally, his brother Jeff Brabham is racing in Indianapolis today. I haven't seen Dad, Sir Jack Brabham, here at Monaco, so I imagine he may well be at Indianapolis watching Jeff. Into the tunnel then for the 21st time, and out of it, Alesi, now Berger. You can see that the gap is extending, and we're on lap 21. Senna leading by 9.75 seconds, having already won this year at Phoenix, leading the World Championship. And that's Mansell and Boutsen. That is the battle for sixth position.
Mansell's bent his front wing. Look at the right front wing is all awry, and that can't help the handling of the car. It might be all right. He may be able to continue, but with the angle, no, that's going to create lift. I'm sure that he's going to have to go in and change that. And Mansell's attempt to get past Boutsen has ended in a serious setback for him. Now let's see if he goes in or whether he carries on. No, he's straight into the pits, so he's not wasting time checking it out. Should be able to get that nose changed pretty quickly. They give him a fresh set of tyres. That's an automatic thing that's done. Fresh tyres are quicker. So changing the nose, of course, is not so quick. Most unfortunate for Mansell, but it's part of a calculated risk here at Monte Carlo, because you have to risk doing that if you're going to pass somebody. He wasn't going to do anything spectacular in the race if he didn't fight his way past. As we look at Ayrton Senna leading the race on his own, lapping one of the back markers. Ayrton Senna now with a lead of over 10 seconds. Prost in second place, of course, with the Alesi still hanging in there, still pushing him.
And while you're watching Ayrton Senna leading the Monaco Grand Prix on
lap 22, I can tell you that Pierluigi Martini is out, and so is Mansell, out back on the track again, and he slots in behind his teammate Alain Prost and ahead of Jean Alesi. Now, is Mansell going to drive tactically? Is he going to make things difficult for Jean Alesi, knowing that his teammate Alain Prost, 4-time winner at Monaco, is ahead of him? Meantime, Ayrton Senna is carving his way through the field. That is Gregor Foytek in front of him in the Monteverdi Onyx as they go into the tunnel with a substantial speed difference between them. And Senna closing up on the Onyx as they come out of the tunnel. The Onyx powered by a Ford V8 engine. And I don't know what we're looking for because we're not seeing anything, but there is the answer, and it's Alain Prost, world champion, second in the race. Alesi behind him, not much difference there. Down to the swimming pool area again, right. Out of it, round past the yacht basin and the yacht workshops on the left of Alain Prost, down to the Rascasse, the cafe, and Jean Alesi is driving as he has done all season. An absolutely magnificent race. Prost goes through. Alesi still within sight of the Ferrari, notwithstanding the horsepower difference. And Ayrton Senna leads by nearly 10 seconds now. He and Prost are lapping at virtually the same speed and to within a tenth of a second in the same time. And Ayrton Senna has just gone round in 1 minute 26.5. You know that he has already broken the lap record by going round in 1 minute 25.3. That's very nearly 88 miles an hour average around this 2.1 mile circuit with all its twists and turns and rise and fall and the tunnel, which the Ferrari is in now. And it's Senna leading Prost by 10 seconds, Alesi third, and you can see the gap. Fourth is Berger, fifth is Patrese, sixth, of course, now is Thierry Boutsen, with Mansell having been into the pits to have a new nose cone. And the problem with Mansell would have been, of course, on account of the fact of having the right front wing pushed up, he would have lost downforce. The object of the wing is to hold the nose, the car, and especially the front wheels down on the track. And because he would lose downforce, he would get understeer. In other words, the car wouldn't handle nearly as well, and there was no option for him but to lose the time that he did by going into the pits. And now on lap 25, Senna 10 seconds ahead of Prost and pulling away by about a tenth of a second a lap. Alesi 2 seconds now behind Prost in third position. Berger 3 seconds behind Alesi is fourth. He's 5 seconds ahead of Patrese, who is in fifth position. And that is Riccardo Patrese in fifth place ahead of Boutsen. And Nelson Piquet is very nearly up in the points again. He's in seventh place. And Piquet is the only driver this season who has scored points by finishing in the top 6 of all 3 races. The first one at Phoenix, the second one at Brazil, the third one at San Marino, when the 3 times Brazilian world champion finished respectively in 4th place at Phoenix, 5th at San Marino, 6th in Brazil. The new 1990 Benetton being a considerable improvement on last year's car. Now, Alesi with Senna right up, or is that Nakajima? I apologise, it's Nakajima. Nakajima, the Japanese driver in the second Tyrrell Ford, about to be lapped by Ayrton Senna, and Nakajima is in 12th place, so the Brazilian has lapped everybody up to 12th position. And this is where Senna is so good at getting through the traffic.
Yes, we lost time on that previous lap with traffic. He's out on the slippery part. Nakajima being almost too kind there for his own good, letting Senna go around him, but all got through well, but it may well have cost him a place. And it looks to me as if Berger is in some physical trouble now, because Berger is now starting to drop back from Alesi, and it's not that Alesi speeded up, it is that Berger has slowed down, both Alesi and Prost still lapping very much the same sort of times that they've been doing for the last 10 laps or so. And that, the most likely cause, it could be some mechanical problem for Berger, but my guess would be that driving a car for Senna, it's been very hastily and only a little bit modified. He's suffering acute discomfort, hence falling away in his from the group fighting for second place.
We've had much greater reliability amongst the front runners than we often get at Monaco, because Senna leading all the way. Prost, Alesi and Berger have been absolutely together for virtually the whole race, and we're on lap 26 now. So the race isn't taking a toll of the front runners. It's still Patrese in 5th position ahead of Boutsen in 6th place. I don't count, of course, the race of having taken a toll in terms of mechanical reliability of Nigel Mansell's Ferrari, and that is it, because it wasn't a mechanical problem that caused Mansell to go into the pits.
And a new lap record this time for Nigel Mansell. So Mansell goes under the 125 barrier, and there it is captioned up. Mansell, remember, of course, has got a fresh set of tyres on, which would help the speed of his car. They put that on while they were fitting the new nose. He was, when he emerged from the pits, he was a whole lap down on Senna. He is currently in 16th place, chasing Eric Bernard. So Mansell really got not too much to do, but he still could finish in the points. This is still a long, long way to go. We're only about a third of the way through the race, or just over a third, or about a third, so there's plenty to go.
Eric Bernard, you saw pull over there. Nigel Mansell passed him. He's now up to Satoru Nakajima, and in front of Satoru Nakajima is Gregor Wojtek, and Wojtek is in 13th position. So it's Wojtek 13th, Nakajima 14th, Mansell there in 15th place, and he's soon going to improve on that. And it looks to me as though Eric Bernard, there he is in the Lola Lamborghini in the background, is, I was going to say giving up, but he's back to racing speed again, so he obviously had some problem going round the Rascasse. So, out of Saint-Devote, up the hill, Mansell challenges Nakajima, Wojtek behind him, then Nakajima. So, here they go, Hotel de Paris. Out of Casino Square, Wojtek, Nakajima, Mansell, watch the Ferrari, the blue flag's waving, and that is to say to the driver in front, there is someone behind you who wants to pass, but he'll see that in his mirrors. And it's really crowded now, because it's Prost and Alesi, second and third, and they have lapped Wojtek and Nakajima and Mansell, but Mansell is closing up on the three in front of him. You don't need me to tell you that, you can see it. So let's watch. Out of the tunnel. Mansell. And Wojtek moves over and lets Mansell through. The Swiss, who was in Formula 3000, had that terrible crash with Johnny Herbert the year before last at Brands Hatch, was in a pretty dreadful couple of teams last year, and he's now in a much better one, and he's certainly showing much more style and quality than we have associated with him with in the past. And so there are the two Tyrrells absolutely together, but spaced out by a lap. And it's, you see the back, it's Nakajima. Now there is Prost. And Mansell is past Nakajima. It's thoroughly confusing here with two Ferraris and two identical Tyrrells, but down to the Mirabeau, Alesi, Nakajima, Wojtek, that is Eric Bernard. Round lows. And the race order then on this, the 29th lap, and it's getting very interesting indeed as Mansell closes up again, is Ayrton Senna leading. The gap has come down between Senna and Prost from over 10 seconds to 7.6. There is Senna leading. Prost has closed up then, but that was probably because of traffic, and he may well drop back again. Jean Alesi in the Tyrrell is still in third place. Berger is still fourth. Patrese and Boutsen are fifth and sixth. Piquet is seventh. De Cesaris is eighth. Warwick is in ninth position, and Ayrton Senna is on the track with a completely clear field in front of him for the time being, but it won't stay that way very much longer. Prost and Mansell very close together on the circuit, separated by a full lap. Prost is now 8.9 seconds. There he is in second place behind Senna. And Mansell is past Nakajima. So Nigel Mansell is now up to 13th position. He's passed Nakajima, he passed Wojtek, he passed Bernard on that lap. He's just gone round in 1 minute 26.1, which is actually 9/10 of a second slower than Ayrton Senna, but of course he passed 3 people in the process. And there in the sole footwork arrows, Alex Caffey, the Italian driver, has got Prost behind him, Mansell behind him, I'm sorry. Caffey is in 12th position. So Mansell is the man to watch at the present moment, fighting back after having had it, and he's through up to the chicane. Nigel Mansell takes the diminutive Alex Caffey, Prost takes Alex Caffey, and the 2 Ferraris are on the circuit absolutely together. There's the gap between them. So, Prost ahead of Caffey, and Caffey, I apologise, is, of course, still ahead of Nigel Mansell, who is in 13th place. But with Prost having taken Caffey without much of a problem, Nigel Mansell will probably do it even quicker because he's on much newer tyres.
Yes, well, Senna has just put up the fastest lap of the race, just pipped the fastest lap that Nigel Mansell did earlier, and of course they're now beating up the lap record time and again, and as the fuel load comes down, for sure it won't be left at 124.9. Mansell, remember, on the fresher rubber.
Lap 30, here is the order, here are the gaps. Ayrton Senna, new lap record holder, 1 minute 24.9, which is 6/10 of a second faster than Alain Prost's 1989 lap record, is now 11.6 seconds ahead of Alain Prost, so it was traffic. Alesi is still third, 3 seconds behind Prost. Berger is still fourth, 6 seconds behind Alesi. Patrese is 4 seconds in 5th position behind Berger. Boutsen is 9 seconds in 6th place behind Patrese. 7th is Piquet, almost in the points. 8th is De Cesaris. 9th is Derek Warwick in the Lotus. 10th is Philippe Alliot in the Ligier. 11th is Paolo Barilla in the Minardi. 12th is Capelli, and look at Boutsen. There is Boutsen, and behind him is Nelson Piquet. So, Nelson Piquet, the veteran, 3 times world champion, number 20 in the green and red Benetton. 3 times a point scorer this season, and there is Alain Prost in the pits. Now, it looks to me from the relaxed attitude as though his race is over. Indeed it is. Alain Prost is out of 2nd position. I don't know what the problem is. Hopefully we'll be able to tell you. But Ferrari look as though they have shot their bolt with 4 times Monaco Grand Prix winner Alain Prost out. That means to say that now Alesi is up into 2nd place, 17.5 seconds behind Ayrton Senna, who can really now, metaphorically speaking, and you watch him, coast home to his 3rd Monaco Grand Prix victory in 4 years. But Berger now will be aiming for that 2nd place to make it a 1st and a 2nd for McLaren. Patrese is up to 4th, Boutsen is up to 5th. Piquet is now in the points again, as he was at Phoenix and Brazil and San Marino. He is in 6th position. De Cesaris is 7th, Warwick is 8th. Senna has lapped everybody up to the 9th position man, and in 10th position it is Philippe Alliot. So Ayrton Senna has once again, as he has so very often been in the past, proved himself to be the class of the field, the thinking man's Grand Prix driver who devotes his whole being and existence to doing well in Grand Prix racing, and how he succeeds.
That was a very interesting shot of Ayrton Senna there, because he was only using half the road coming out of the Casino Square. And with a comfortable lead of just on 19 seconds, he can well afford to do, and what he appeared to be doing there was avoiding the big bumps that are over on the when you use the full racing line out of Casino Square. There's a couple of big bumps, but by going only as far as the middle of the road, he avoided that, and that, I'm sure, is a technique to save the car from undue and unnecessary stress. So Senna undoubtedly driving well within himself, and there's the camera that looks at his head. We don't get much of an accurate impression of the expression on his face through that dark visor. Senna clearly anxious to put behind him that terrible unforced error from 2 years ago when he put it into the wall. He's driving this year, looks very contained, and both within himself, and also he is clearly making an effort to look after the car and avoid any unnecessary stresses. Now watch him as he goes round the left-hand part of the Hotel de Paris and into the Casino Square. Now, will he stay well over to the middle of the road? Yes, he does. You see, once again, he used a little bit more road than the previous lap, but still by no means going right out to the big bumps.
Well, as you watch Ayrton Senna, I can tell you what his problem was when he went out of the lead in the San Marino Grand Prix. And it really is a boy's own paper story, because believe it or not, a very, very small stone somehow wedged itself between the brake caliper and the wheel rim, and it literally acted as a lathe and machined the rim off the wheel. So it's not at all surprising that Ayrton Senna's tyre went flat, because the wheel had collapsed. And that's the sort of thing that can happen in Grand Prix racing that not even the most brilliant design can foresee. You're looking now at the Williams, or at the Ligier of, I've just checked, and coming, it's either Philippe Alliot or Larini, and he's about to be caught by Jean Alesi, who is now in second position, and that is Piquet off the circuit, and that's tragic for him, because he was right up to Thierry Boutsen. He spun at Lowe's just as he did last year. Now, last year he was trying to be taken, and there he is, Piquet going through, and he was trying at this point last year to avoid De Cesaris, and he didn't.
Looked like there was damage to the car now, because the front wing, the right front wing is missing, and that right front wheel we saw locked. Now that means the suspension is probably a bit bent, so because the wheel was off the ground as he braked then. But Piquet will be out of the race anyway, because under new regulations devised following the Japanese Grand Prix fiasco last year with the Senna and Prost incident, the rule has now sensibly been written that anybody who needs a push to restart the car from a dangerous place will be automatically disqualified from the race, and I think that's not quite enough, but it's an improvement, because the rule should read that if anybody has a car push started for whatever reason, receives outside assistance, they are disqualified from the race without any question. And that, of course, will couple of things, so there's no argument, but at least that's better. Now Piquet going for the pits, but I'm sure he'll be told that he's not in the race anymore anyway.
Well, we'll see. It's the right front wing that's missing. Once again, the car goes up on the jacks, and once again, as an automatic procedure, his tyres are replaced. It's going to take more than the 10 seconds that it will take to replace the tyres for them to deal with the nose cone problem. And now it is Ayrton Senna constantly increasing his lead. We're on lap 35 now, which is nearly halfway in this 78th lap race, as you watch the Ligier, the Minardi, and it spins! And that's the Minardi of, I think, Paolo Barilla, and Berger goes through, and that is Riccardo Patrese, and the second Tyrrell going through, and of course the car spun there, Nelson Piquet sitting very composed, tremendously experienced driver. This is his 176th Grand Prix. Race order on lap 36. Senna now leading Alesi by 23 seconds and lapping faster than the Tyrrell. But Alesi is still 3 seconds. Watch the spin again.
Yes, that looks just like a little bit of over-enthusiasm with the throttle pedal, booting it a bit too hard, but very convenient. That was Barilla. Very convenient for Gerhard Berger, because he was fighting his way through that traffic, and he was able, of course, that saved him making up a place.
Well, Berger is 3.8 seconds behind Alesi. That is the Frenchman. It is Tyrrell Ford.
And this is the man who has really astoundingly made his mark on Grand Prix racing in 1990, because he refused to give way to Ayrton Senna in the first Grand Prix of the year at Phoenix. Having been passed by Senna, he arrogantly, as a new boy, repassed the Brazilian, took the lead and held it for a long time to finish second in the Phoenix Grand Prix, the first of the year. And Alesi is still in 5th position in the World Championship, headed by Ayrton Senna, of course, who is 1 point ahead of Prost and Berger, or was when this race began, but it'll be different at the end of it, because Berger in the background there, 3rd at Monaco, 2nd in the World Championship, will score points here, whereas Alain Prost, is if he finishes, of course, whereas Alain Prost will not, because he's already out of the race. And it is now lap 37. Senna leads by 22 seconds. Alesi is lapping faster than the Brazilian. Berger is in 3rd position, 5 seconds behind Alesi. Patrese is in 4th place. Boutsen is in 5th position. We're riding with Berger as he goes round the 48, which is where Senna went off in 1988. Into the tunnel, 160 miles an hour. Berger, and we've said this many times before, but it's worth saying again, that he's in a car that was set up, this is the spare McLaren, and it was set up for Ayrton Senna, whose build is very different to that of Gerhard Berger, and the Austrian may well be in considerable discomfort.
Well, in accordance with the new rules that I mentioned earlier, if we watch the battle for second place, because Berger's still got Alesi very much in his sights, Piquet's gone back out onto the circuit and was immediately black flagged for receiving outside assistance. So the authorities have clamped straight down and enforced that new rule. And Berger has pulled a second on Alesi, and it doesn't matter how much it hurts, because a new lease of life for Gerhard Berger. He's just put up his fastest lap of the race. So on lap 37, he's managed to find something. Whether he's in agony and whether he'll be able to sustain that sort of speed remains to be seen. But the pain is certainly eased when you've got another car in sight in front, because that really focuses your mind on that thing and takes away all the thoughts of the pain.
I'm trying to do a bit of mental arithmetic while I talk to you and think what the year was when Jim Clark won the Dutch Grand Prix in the Lotus Cosworth car with the DFV engine. It's as long 1967. There's Prost retired in the pits. It's 1967 when the engine that Alesi is using at the moment was originally designed, and it's still going strong. The Cosworth V8, it's admittedly a revised version, the DFR, but Alesi in the V8-powered Tyrrell is keeping ahead of Berger there, 3rd position in the latest McLaren with the latest V10 Honda engine, and it's a superb achievement by the Frenchman. Is he going to be able to stay there for the rest of the race? Well, he's 20... And that is Nakajima, that is not Alesi. Nakajima, and he spin turns the Tyrrell by giving it a welly of full power. He's in the swimming pool section, and the race order now, lap 39, 78-lap race as you watched here. Boutsen, Senna leading Alesi by 22 seconds, and Nakajima is staggering into the pits in his Tyrrell Ford. Alesi is 4 seconds ahead of Berger, who is 14 seconds ahead of 4th place Patrese, as the Japanese driver Satoru Nakajima tours into the pits. We'll see what the problem is, hopefully. Boutsen is 17 seconds in 5th place behind Riccardo Patrese. And under the Tyrrell go the Jacks, and we're waiting for the 6th place man to come through now. There's a long, long gap, because Ayrton Senna has lapped everybody up to 6th place, and there you see the situation as he goes through and laps Derek Warwick, who is in 6th place. So in the points, I said that Derek Warwick in the San Marino Grand Prix was in the points for the first time in 1990. I was wrong. He was in 7th place at the time, but he is very definitely in the points for the first time this year now. He's 6th at Monaco.
Yes, he'll be well aware that as Piquet comes back in, and that's just because he was black flagged, so end of the day's work for Nelson Piquet. Nigel Mansell, of course, is the man chasing Derek Warwick for 6th place, some 14 odd seconds behind Warwick, but going pretty quickly. So Mansell, the two British drivers, will in due course be fighting over 6th place.
With Senna leading by 22 seconds, there is the distinctive red and white car with the world-famous yellow helmet, the hero of Brazil. And he really is a hero. He's practically a god in Brazil. And he can, by his very considerable standards, take things very easily indeed now. He can keep away from the apex of the corners to a greater extent. He can change gear earlier, he can brake earlier, because a 22-second cushion at this stage of the race is enormous. Berger, about 3.8 seconds behind Alesi. There's Riccardo Patrese, 4th position on the caption. Both the Williams are well in the points, which will help their manufacturers' constructors' championship situation, but the McLarens, of course, are 1st and 3rd.
Yes, and Mansell is catching Derek Warwick pretty quickly, some 4 seconds a lap at the moment. And the gap now down to under 10 seconds between Warwick and Mansell. So Warwick's 6th place looks at the moment like being a temporary thing, unless he can find some more speed, because Mansell's catching him hand over fist. Ayrton Senna can take it, as Murray just said, very comfortably indeed. And I'm sure he'll be feeling some pressure, because as what has happened in the past here 2 years ago when he put it in the wall, and I'm sure he won't feel in any way relaxed or comfortable until he sees the checkered flag. Berger is still charging along. He's putting in a tremendous succession of really quick laps, and although he's chipping away at Alesi's lead over him in 2nd place, he's not making a lot of progress. Alesi is responding, and a real fight is developing there in the middle of the race with those two. And the gap is just over 3 seconds as they went past last time. They're due at any moment, and I'll give you that gap as they cross the line. Alesi goes through, and Berger is still chipping away. It was 3.3 seconds last lap. Chips another 2/10 off. It's 3.1, just over the 3 seconds.
Well, there's Warwick coming out of Lowe's, and in the background, just the top left corner of your screen, you saw Mansell. Now there's Warwick, who is 7 seconds ahead of Mansell, but on the other hand, Mansell is lapping 3 seconds a lap faster than the Lotus. So in 2 laps, Nigel Mansell should be challenging for 6th position, which is held by this man, number 11, Derek Warwick, from St. John in Jersey, although he really comes from 4 marks in Hampshire. And the Lamborghini engine has been going extremely well. It's only the 1st season that Lotus have used the V12, compared with the 2nd season for the Lola Lamborghini team of Gerard Larousse, and the Lotuses have been going consistently better all this season. And Patrese seems to have stopped. I'm just checking on lap charts, I'm checking on our readout, I'm watching Derek Warwick as you are, because that's what I see. And Mansell is definitely up into 6th position. Derek Warwick, there is the answer. Riccardo Patrese in his Williams Renault, the man who was in 4th position, is no longer there. Gerhard Berger is 3rd, Alesi leads, Senna is 2nd, the time is slipping past for Riccardo Patrese. The Renault technicians are working on the engine. It's obviously some kind, I think it's an electronic problem, judging from the way they are working. And meantime, Derek Warwick is 5th, Mansell is in the points, only 5 seconds behind Derek Warwick in the Lotus, and Thierry Boutsen is in 4th position, but yet to come through. The leaders are on lap 43 out of 78, and the lone McLaren Honda of Ayrton Senna dominates Alesi is at the present moment the fastest man on the circuit. Boutsen has gone through in 4th position, but it's not going to be all that much time before he too is passed by Ayrton Senna, who is driving an incredibly commanding, authoritative race here at Monaco. He is now on his 44th lap. Ayrton Senna then 43 laps completed, 78 laps to complete, and the McLaren, as ever, with all their experience in terms of building race-winning cars and championship-winning cars behind the Brazilian, the car is really reliable and consistent. There's the gap. Warwick in 5th position, Mansell in 6th place. Never mind the gap between Alesi and Senna. You've just seen it. What we're interested in, looking at the picture, is the gap between 5th position man Derek Warwick and the brilliantly recovering Nigel Mansell in his Ferrari, who has stopped to have a nose cone replaced after breaking the right front wing against the rear of Boutsen's car as he attempted to take him earlier on in the race. And very soon, Mansell in the semi-automatic gearbox V12 Ferrari is going to take the V12 Lamborghini-powered Lotus of Derek Warwick swimming pool down to the Rascasse.
Mansell will be looking at his first opportunity will probably be into Saint-Devote on the pit straight, if he can get onto the pit straight. Well, in the meantime, Patrese has just gone out of the pits, and really he will have lost too much time in the pits to have a serious chance. And Mansell ducking out alongside the Lotus Lamborghini, but failed to find a way round. He had a look at both sides, in fact. Went to the left first, then went to the right. Around the Hotel de Paris into Casino Square, and the slower car in front may just be no, and the Onyx moves out of the way. No room for Mansell, and that was JJ Leto. He's having a bit of a struggling time with the Onyx team. Now Mansell is one of the places he's favoured for passing has been into the chicane, but he may be a bit more circumspect now because that cost him the pit stop, that when he damaged the front wing. And you see here, you've seen two cars with like a 3-second lap difference in speed. He's going to have a go into the back, and Mansell makes it down the inside. He had a look there the last lap, decided that there was room, and so Mansell moves up into 6th place and onto the leaderboard for points.
Derek Warwick with 118 Grand Prix behind him, one of the most experienced men in the race, knew his time had come, and there was no point in trying to resist the superior power of Mansell's V12 Ferrari. Politely moved over, let the Englishman through. Riccardo Patrese rolls into the pits. He has rejoined and has come back again, so it's his second time. Whatever the problem was, and they may have thought they had fixed, they clearly hadn't. And now we are on lap 46. Senna leads Alesi by 20.5 seconds. Berger is 2.5 seconds behind the Frenchman's Tyrrell. Boutsen is 4th, almost lapped by Senna. Mansell, that you are looking at, is 5th, and lapping 4 seconds slower than Ayrton Senna, so the Brazilian is in absolutely no danger because Mansell is well back in any case. Derek Warwick still in the points, though, in 6th position. Philippe Alliot in the Ligier. We're riding with Berger, who is getting closer to Jean Alesi as we go back with picture breakup to Riccardo Patrese sitting in the pits. But Berger is now making a challenge. This is Senna out of Rascasse up into the start and finish area. And at this point, he'll be doing about 160 miles an hour. Alain Prost consulting in the Ferrari pit. Meantime, Senna is round Saint-Devote, up the hill into Casino Square again.
And still Gerhard Berger trying away in 3rd place to cut that gap down with Jean Alesi. And in fact, he's just on the previous lap put up his fastest lap of the race to bring the gap down to some 2.5 seconds. And still, he's closer still now with the Lazy, not a very quick lap, maybe with a bit of traffic. Just 1.7 seconds now between Berger and the Lazy. However, there is a big question mark over Berger's comfort in the car, particularly the spare car that was set up for Senna. And if he is in physical trouble, it'll be that much more difficult for him to be able to attack Alesi when he gets to him. First of all, for the restricted movement that he has in the cockpit, the limit there by limiting his ability to really chuck the car around. And point one, and point two, of course, the general level of extra exhaustion that he'll be suffering because of restricted movement.
You saw Riccardo Patrese out of the car and in his pit garage, so he has retired from the Monaco Grand Prix. Boutsen then consolidates his 4th position, and Ayrton Senna is lapping at about 1 minute 25.6. Riccardo Patrese, helmet off, sadly reflecting on how fortunes can change. The last Grand Prix he won at San Marino, and this one he is out of the race. And as I guessed, it is some sort, and this is official, of electronic problem in the ancillaries are attached to the Renault V10 engine, which has taken him out. No such problem with the V10 Honda engine of Ayrton Senna's leading McLaren on lap 48 now. 30 laps to go, including the one he's on. That's still a long way, but the one thing that we do not expect from McLaren is mechanical unreliability, or for Honda. Prost, Ferrari pit. Senna leading by 23 seconds. Alesi just 2 seconds ahead of Gerhard Berger. That's the real scrap at the moment. Boutsen is about to be lapped by Senna. You saw the Williams and the McLaren together in the same shot for a moment. You see them again. Boutsen in 4th place, the Belgian driver. 3rd in Phoenix, 5th in Brazil. And Boutsen is 6th equal in the championship with Nelson Piquet, who has long since been black flagged for breaking the new regulations here at Monaco, and is therefore going to score no World Championship points this race, unlike the previous 3 of 1990. Boutsen accelerates out of Saint-Devote, up the hill with the harbour on his right, round the Hotel de Paris, into Casino Square, past the Massenet and the casino itself, down the hill. And if there's one thing a Grand Prix driver wants at this stage of the race, when he has done 47 laps of Monaco, it's a drink, and that's what Patrese gets, as absolutely effortlessly as Boutsen moves over. Senna, who is his great personal friend, goes through to lap the Belgian. And only Ayrton Senna and Jean Alesi and Gerhard Berger are now on the same lap after 48 laps. Patrick Head on the left, the designer of the Williams Renault, talks to Riccardo Patrese about whatever the problem was. Great mutual respect between those two. And Ayrton Senna goes round the swimming pool complex again. This is a comparatively new part of the Monaco circuit. They used to go along the top road, which Senna is approaching now, round the Rascasse, the right-hander, which in turn leads into the pit lane, where he's going down it, but he's not, because he's going through now to complete lap 50. And unless I am very much mistaken, Ayrton Senna is now definitely mentally chalking up his 3rd Monaco Grand Prix victory in 4 years, having won in the Lotus with the active suspension in 1987, having so very nearly won in 1988 when he allowed the pressure of the fact that Alain Prost had moved up into 2nd position to get to him, and he drove into the Armco at the Portier to lose the race. He made no mistake in 1989, and he's certainly making no mistake in 1990, and Berger has now got Jean Alesi well within his sights, because we're with the 3rd place man of Gerhard Berger, as he drops down to the Mirabeau. He's getting closer and closer to the Tyrrell Ford of Jean Alesi, who is either getting tired or his tyres are, because I think very soon it's going to be the old story of McLaren 1st and 2nd.
Yes, certainly these two. This is the race within the race at the moment. The battle for second place. It's taken Berger quite a long time to get this close to Alesi. And in fact, although I would say that Alesi's tyres are still okay, because it's not so much that he's lapping any slower, that Berger has found just a little bit more speed. Really the problem, the question is whether Berger is in good enough physical shape to sustain this attack, because this is where it becomes even more physically exhausting than just driving on your own, is when you're very close to another car, much higher level of concentration with reduced visibility, the buffeting you get from the air, the turbulence created in the wind from the car in front, plus the fact that through the hole in the air in the corners, your car doesn't get as much grip because the wings aren't working as well, so the car jumps around more. So in every way, it's probably twice as hard work to drive that close to another car than to drop it back 2 seconds and follow from there. So Berger now got him in close-up. We've been having a good look, and this is a tremendous view from the onboard camera. You see the inside front wheel as it goes light, just grabbing and locking on the brakes. So you get a very good impression when they come out onto the start-finish straight of the acceleration of these cars, because Alesi gets the drop first and he positively rockets away from Berger, despite the fact that Berger's got 3.5 litres and 700 horsepower coming out of the Honda from behind him. He doesn't get on the accelerator first, and that's the difference it makes. You want to see from Berger's car as they go onto the start-finish straight. We had a good view of that on the previous lap. Watch Alesi's car just walk away. He's on the power, Berger's on the power now, and look at it disappear. So these two are locked in combat. Unfortunately for us at the moment, for the purity of the race, they've been several laps without being molested by slower cars that they've had to lap. But of course that Berger won't be thinking positively about the purity of the race. He'll be waiting for slower cars to join in their battle, because that might just give him the opening that he needs to get past Alesi. He'll be very keen to get preferably a group of slower cars, and hope that out of the mélange that they might create, he can emerge in front of Alesi.
No signs of that happening at the moment, and they are lapping to within 1/10 of a second in exactly the same time, obviously, because the gap between them is not diminishing. And you can see on the graphic there how far ahead of them Ayrton Senna is in distance. In time, it's 23 seconds, with the white dot of Gerhard Berger and the blue and white car of Jean Alesi in front of him. Down to the swimming pool complex again, about 85 miles an hour, up into third gear here, 90 miles an hour, down into second gear, about 30 miles an hour as they roll round the Rascasse, and Berger is definitely closer here, but again, Alesi gets the power down, the V8 Ford engine, and he pulls away from Gerhard Berger on the exit. Now they are down to Saint-Devote, lining up for the Hill, Casino de Paris, the Hotel de Paris. And Berger has now got the McLaren in a situation where before very much longer he's going to have the rear wing, the front wing, and you'll notice they've got new trim tabs on the McLaren front wing to provide the best possible aerodynamics and downforce here at Monaco.
And we're now getting another race developing, because Nigel Mansell has caught right up on Thierry Boutsen. Mansell charging through the field, as we stay quite rightly with the big battle for second place, but we've now got a battle for second, and we've also got a battle for fourth place being joined. And this comes at a good time. We are exactly 2/3 distance of the race completed.
With half the entry disappearing, or disappeared, So Senna leads by 22 seconds. This is the battle for second. In front of us, the blue and white car, number 4, is Jean Alesi, the Frenchman in the Tyrrell Ford. Riding with the third place man, Gerhard Berger. Watch his right hand on the gear lever. In fourth position, but lapped by the leader, Ayrton Senna, is Thierry Boutsen. And then, behind Thierry Boutsen, Nigel Mansell is challenging. And behind him, of course, Derek Warwick. Nigel Mansell is only 0.3 of a second now behind Thierry Boutsen. There could be a change for fourth position while we are back watching the battle for second between Alesi and Berger. And Warwick is still in the points in sixth place. So it's Senna, Alesi, Berger, lapped then fourth, Boutsen, chased by Mansell, fifth. Warwick is in sixth position. And still Berger challenges, and still Alesi resists him.
Yes, the cars, the leaders really spread out now because Senna's got a 23-second advantage over the Alesi-Berger battle, and then there's a huge, nearly 1 1/3 minutes, 1 minute 17 seconds from Berger back to Boutsen. And there we have it, Mansell right on Boutsen's tail. He caught him pretty quickly, and I would suspect Mansell is on the fresher rubber and the softer. I'd be very surprised if Mansell can get past Boutsen on the start-finish straight into Saint-Devote, because the Renault engine is certainly an extremely good one. The car overall is good, so, and with the smooth and high level of power that the Renault has got, Mansell may have some trouble. He may have to muscle his way past Thierry Boutsen.
Well, this is a stunning drive by Nigel Mansell, because he lost a whole lap to the leaders earlier on, and he's now the fastest man on the circuit. Right up with Thierry Boutsen, challenging for fourth position, being led by Ayrton Senna, with a gigantic battle just like this one going on between Alesi and Berger. Ahead of them for second position. Boutsen then into the tunnel. Mansell behind him. Coming out of the tunnel could be Mansell's chance.
Well, I don't know whether Mansell saw it, but it looked to me like Boutsen rather was leaving him room to get past down the inside into the station hairpin there. So we'll see if Nigel clocked that, and if he has a go there the next lap. Certainly Boutsen stayed very much over the right-hand side of the road, down the hill from the Mirabeau to the station hairpin. This demonstrates very well the problems that Monte Carlo presents. You see Mansell climbing all over the back of Boutsen's car, but then Boutsen, they go onto the straight, Boutsen gets onto the power first, and that little split second sooner that he can get onto the throttle is all he needs to give him the break on Mansell to get him to the next corner.
Lap 56.
White flag being waved, that means there's a slower car or a course car. Well, there is the slower car. It's one of the Onyxes, I think, arm raised, putting into retire.
Yeah, I think it was Gregor Foytek. There was a terrific battle going on between Foytek, Bernard and Barilla, and Foytek seems to have thrown in the sponge there. Something's gone wrong with the car, nothing wrong with Mansell's car. What a pity that he had that problem with the wing. And he's right up now with Thierry Boutsen, with Senna some 21 seconds ahead of the battle between Alesi and Berger. Through the tunnel again. Is this going to be Nigel? This is where Boutsen left him some room on the previous lap, and he's done it again. And Nigel Mansell goes through this time and up into fourth position, passing the Williams Honda. And behind them, you see the battle between Alesi and Berger for second and third. So, and now Alesi is challenging. He's going to lap Thierry Boutsen. He does so. Alesi, who is second, goes past Boutsen, who is between Alesi and the McLaren. So it's Mansell, Alesi.
Yes, and that's just what Berger didn't want, because Alesi, with supreme confidence and optimism, jumped Thierry Boutsen just as Berger was rushing to get close onto his tail to pick up any delays that were inflicted on him. And Alesi saw the situation, grabbed a small opening, and took it beautifully. But he's still got Mansell ahead of him. He may struggle to catch, let alone pass Mansell, because now that Mansell's got past Boutsen, he's going to be quicker. And what Gerhard Berger won't want is that Nigel Mansell can lap at just the sort of speed that helped pull the lazy round.
Let's see, into the tunnel, Nigel Mansell, who is now fourth and practically a full lap behind in terms of race distance. Jean Alesi, who is second, and just ahead of Gerhard Berger, who is third. We're riding with Berger. This is the new chicane. We're coming down to the back now. Alesi in front. Mansell is still in fourth position, ahead of the battle for second. Mansell in the Ferrari. There's Alesi, behind him Berger. Alesi is proving again to be a hero of a Grand Prix. Just as he was at Phoenix, so is he here at Monaco. And Senna has gone round again, a new lap record, 1 minute 24.8. compared with the previous lap record which applied at the beginning of this race. Alain Prost in the McLaren, 1:25.5, and Berger is definitely inching up now. He's almost in a passing position. You can see the gearbox through the camera of Gerhard Berger's McLaren, of Alesi's Tyrrell, but not for much longer. It pulls away a bit. Mansell is staying well ahead of the battle now between Alesi second, Berger third. Into the Mirabeau, down round Lowe's hairpin, into the Portier, which is a second gear corner.
Yes, and Mansell is pulling away a little bit, and Alesi should be using that as something to pull him along. I'm saying that's, of course, what Berger doesn't want, but it is exactly what Alesi does want. If he can have a car in sight of him that is capable of going a tiny bit quicker than him, as Mansell appears to be doing, because he's pulling away but a very small amount, that can help Alesi raise his game, also gives him a stimulus to see, which at this stage of the race is most important. Drivers are very, very tired, and anything that they can have to take their mind off how bad they feel, such as a fast Mansell ahead of one to focus on, is indeed a help. From now on, it is a real battle against exhaustion, as well as all the other problems faced with the drivers. And Berger, of course, with an uncomfortable cockpit, is putting on a pretty heroic display in third place and fighting for second.
And Ayrton Senna is making sure that, unlike 1988, his concentration doesn't drop by lapping at lap record speed. He's now 25 seconds ahead of Alesi and Berger that you're looking at, second and third. Nigel Mansell is actually the second fastest man on the circuit. No, he's now the fastest man on the circuit. 1 minute 25.6 compared with Alesi, 1:25.8, who is therefore second fastest, and Senna is now third fastest because he's got a big cushion of nearly 25 seconds and he can afford to relax, but not too much, as we know from 1988 when it was right there that he went into the barriers. But Berger is pushing, and Alesi is resisting, and Mansell is still fourth. Boutsen is fifth. Derek Warwick is still in the points in sixth position as second and third come down into the back. Alex Caffey in the Arrows is in seventh position. And as you can see, only Senna, Alesi and Berger are on the same lap. How much longer is it going to be before Ayrton Senna closes up on this battle? Well, quite a while, I should think. He's again gone round in lap record speed. 1 minute 24.68. Lapped everybody up to Berger in the background, who is third. And Mansell is lapping in 1:25.1, slower than Senna.
Yes, and I think what Senna is doing at the moment is probably a very good thing for him, because he's had a pretty boring and lonely race out in the front, and by attacking the lap record and having a bit of fun, that should sharpen up his concentration. He should be less tired than the others, because he's had been able to drive with less than 100% of physical output, and but at the same time he will be mentally tired because he's had very little stimulation to keep him busy, to keep the brain busy. So he's now given it something to do by having a bit of fun at the lap record. And although a lot of people would say that this is why go so quick so late in the race, in fact that is better to keep your concentration up sometimes than driving a couple of seconds off speed and nursing the car, because boredom kills any concentration. So back to the battle for second place. Still a bit of a stalemate, as we come to expect in Monaco, with the problems of overtaking on these overly narrow streets and this overly twisty but very famous circuit.
Race order as you continue to watch the battle between Alesi in front, who is second, and our car, Gerhard Berger, who is third. Senna now leading by 26 seconds. Nigel Mansell is 1 minute and 21 seconds in fourth position, behind Ayrton Senna, who leads. In fifth position, it is Thierry Boutsen. In sixth position, it is still Derek Warwick. In seventh place, it is Alex Caffey. In eighth position, it is Gregor Wojtek. And in ninth position, it's Bernard. And now you see Ayrton Senna going through and taking Alex Caffey, number 10, the little Italian in the Arrows, whose teammate Michele Alboreto failed to qualify. And the Arrows team look as though they are in considerable trouble. They seem to be missing Ross Brawn, their designer, who went to Jaguar at the end of 1989 and is certainly making his name here. But Arrows are suffering. Only one car qualified, Alex Caffey. And Ayrton Senna goes through now to complete his 61st lap. 16 laps, including the one he is on to go. Lapping consistently, keeping up the pressure. And the cars are pretty spread out around the circuit now. The rain that we were worried might come down has shown no signs of doing so. It's overcast, it's grey, there's no sunshine, but happily there is no rain. And that's the last thing we want at this stage of the race, which would bring drivers into the pits to change from slick tyres to wet weather tyres, as we had in the Formula 3 race yesterday. So it's Senna leading, Alesi 25 seconds now behind him, with Berger right under his rear wing. In fourth position, Mansell. In fifth position, Thierry Boutsen. In sixth position, Warwick. Seventh is Caffey. Eighth is Wojtek in the Onyx. In ninth position is Bernard in the Lola. And that's it, because 26 cars started, and Bernard is the last one effectively running in ninth position, but that is not at all strange at Monaco. And to the people who say, if we can get a man on the moon, why can't we get a Grand Prix car to finish a race? The answer is that these cars are at the extreme limits of what they were designed for. And it's not only the cars that give problems on a circuit like this, as you can see from the way Gerhard Berger is having to drive, never mind to keep Alesi in sight, never mind to get past him. It's a real problem for drivers. Now, with a race that's going to last for 2 hours, very nearly, which is the maximum length a Grand Prix is permitted to last before the checkered flag comes out, if the race distance hasn't been completed, the drivers must be getting very, very tired indeed. I say again, with no apologies for repetition, that Gerhard Berger is driving a car he did not expect to be driving when this race began, because having crashed at the Mirabeau in the first lap after the first start, he's had to transfer to a car that was set up for Ayrton Senna, and the way the car is set up for Senna and the way the car is set up for Berger are bound to differ, and in any case Berger wasn't very comfortable in his own car. He goes into the tunnel again, builds up to 165 miles an hour as he comes out of it. They breast a small crest, which they're at now, drop down to the new chicane, which was built at enormous expense on reclaimed land a couple of years ago. And John Alesi, the very determined Frenchman, number 4, who opted not to take the number 3 because to his teammate Nakajima, who was going to be number 4, that's an unlucky number for a Japanese. And so Alesi is number 4 on the car. He's number 2 in the race. He is on his 64th lap now. And he's in only his 12th Grand Prix. And John Alesi seems to have stabilised the gap between himself and Gerhard Berger. He's actually just lapped 0.8 of a second faster than the Austrian in the McLaren Honda, and there he is. Senna leading by 22.5 seconds. Alesi is now the second fastest man on the circuit. The fastest man is still Nigel Mansell, fourth in the V12 Ferrari, but a long, long way, 1 minute and 20 seconds behind Gerhard Berger, there in third position. Mansell is now nearly 30 seconds ahead of Thierry Boutsen, who is in fifth position. Boutsen in turn is 17 seconds ahead of Derek Warwick, the last man in the points for the first time in the Lotus Lamborghini in the 4 Grand Prix that have been held this year. And hopefully it looks as though the Lotus team have overcome their problems. Sadly, Martin Donnelly went out with a gearbox problem earlier on. So, in the Monaco Grand Prix, Alain Prost is out of the race. Both the Tyrrells started, of course, but now Nakajima has retired. Patrese is out, and that is Nigel Mansell touring. Nigel Mansell surged past by both Alesi and Berger, and it looks to me, just as the Ferrari car of Alain Prost failed earlier on, so the Ferrari of Nigel Mansell appears to have failed. And that would be, and it has. Nigel Mansell retires from the Monaco Grand Prix, and this sadly reflects very badly on Ferrari.
Yes, indeed. They really seem to have lost their way since John Barnard left the company at the end of last season, both on the chassis. There we see Senna looking at his head being buffeted around, and gives a little idea of how you get jarred and shaken in these very stiffly suspended cars that of course feel every bump and ripple at the high speeds to which they're subjected. And really tragedy for Nigel Mansell, particularly as that's the second race on the trot that he's gone to over 2/3 distance of the race, and only to be let down when well placed in the late stages of the race. But in Phoenix, no Ferraris finished. In Brazil, things were better, but then back to Imola, Mansell broke down towards the end of the race, and now in Monte Carlo, both Ferraris are gone, and this is not the standard of reliability that we expect from Ferrari. From the mid-70s through to the mid-80s, they were the marker team for reliability. That's the one thing that they were always good on. Their chassis weren't necessarily good, but their reliability was tremendous and their engines were tremendous. And now really it seems that they got the chassis right last year with Barnard present. They've lost their way this year, and they seem to be losing their way on everything at the moment.
Yes, let's try and run through the retirements. Both Alain Prost and Nigel Mansell out as you watch the seemingly victorious Ayrton Senna on his way to his third Monaco Grand Prix victory. Satoru Nakajima out of the race. Riccardo Patrese is out. Both David Brabham and Modena are out. Warwick is in, but Donnelly is out. Capelli is out on the Monaco Grand Prix. Both Nannini and Piquet have long since disappeared, as have Pirro and De Cesaris and Martini. Larini is out, but his teammate Alio is now out as well. Both the McLarens, of course, are running significantly and not surprisingly in first and third position, because, as I have said several times already, the one thing that one does not associate McLaren with is unreliability. Aguri Suzuki in the Lola is out, and JJ Leto in the Monteverdi Onyx is out. In fact, it's now Senna leading on lap 66 out of 78. Alesi still second, still staving off the determined efforts as Ayrton Senna goes into the tunnel, a brightly lit tunnel this year, and out of it at 165 miles an hour. Alesi still staving off, and in fact pulling away slightly as Nigel Mansell walks in, wearily waves sadly to the crowd. He's almost back to the pit, and Nigel, who said earlier this year
that he was going to drive for reliability and points finishes in 1990 must be wondering whether his career at Ferrari is going to go on very much longer. Mansell was fourth in Brazil. He retired at Phoenix. He retired at the San Marino Grand Prix at Imola. He's now retired at Monaco, so he's only had one finish in 4 races. This is slightly wind-up time for the drivers and their teams, because although this is only the 4th Grand Prix of the year, already we're hearing rumours about who is going where in 1990. There have been rumours that Mansell might return to Williams to drive with the Renault V10 engine behind him and therefore leave Ferrari, just as there have been rumours that Ayrton Senna, that you're looking at, might be going to Ferrari. There have also been rumours that Senna is putting about rumours that he's going to leave in order to increase his asking price for 1991. And as his asking price is already something like £6 million a year, if he got more than that, he would be an even wealthier man than he is now. And I should think he's already worth the gross national product of the whole of Brazil. So Ayrton Senna leading on lap 67. I hesitate to use my phrase, nothing can stop him now, because and it's something just might, but it seems very unlikely. He's in a beautiful rhythm. He's driving well within himself. If anything was going to have gone wrong with the car, it would surely have gone wrong by now. His tyres will be in quite adequate condition. He's leading Alesi by 21 seconds. Nigel Mansell, incidentally, went out with a broken gearbox, and that is official. And John Alesi and Gerhard Berger, with about 2 or 3 seconds between them, approach the start and finish point, go over the line. Now, in fact, Berger is dropping back. Alesi is building up a gap between himself and Berger, a slightly increasing gap. He's down now, Alesi, to under 20 seconds behind Ayrton Senna, the race leader that you see going round Lowe's corner. Alesi is nearly 2.5 seconds ahead of Gerhard Berger in 3rd position. Of course, now up to 4th position, back to 4th position will come Thierry Boutsen, up to 5th position, by far his highest position this year, Derek Warwick, and lapped but in the points, good news for Arrows, Alex Caffey, the Italian, and that's Derek Warwick. Derek Warwick has spun and stalled. He's not going to be able to restart the car. This is yes, he is. And he's got to spin it right the way round again. He nearly collected the McLaren there. He's obviously got the engine running, and that was the McLaren of Ayrton Senna that he nearly collected. Well, Warwick's going to spin the car around. I think he's waiting for the marshals to give him the go so that he can safely... And meantime, things are happening all around the circuit because they're coming round the swimming pool absolutely full chat and blind and not able to see Derek Warwick. There are yellow flags waving, and we are now on the 70th lap. He must not go the wrong way round the circuit. And unless he can spin himself stationary around 360 degrees, I don't see how he can avoid doing that. If he does go the wrong way, he's going to be excluded. And knowing Derek Warwick, who is very quick thinking and very experienced, he will have realised that, and he will realise that he's got to give that Lamborghini engine a boot full of power and spin it round in the car's length. Meantime, lap 70. Senna is leading by a decreasing margin, 17.5 seconds. I have no doubt, well, very little doubt, I have no doubt that Ayrton Senna is pacing himself rather than in trouble. But Alesi is lapping now 2 seconds faster as number 11, the Lotus Lamborghini of Derek Warwick, is craned off. He's out of the race. Caffey is now 5th, and Foytik is up into 6th in the Onyx. First time points.
Well, gesticulation there from Senna as he went by. That, I think, was to get the circuit cleared. And he certainly was trying to tell the marshals something. But in the meantime, Berger, who has been hanging in all the time with Alesi, they've been battling away over that 2nd place. They came on some traffic. The gap was just over 2 seconds for some time, with Berger struggling to hold it, but keeping there. And now with a bit of traffic, that's helped him get that little bit closer. Senna, of course, has cut his pace very comfortably. He can afford to cruise the line. He's I think a lot slower than Alesi and Berger, who of course are still locked in combat. But Senna with plenty in hand, no problem. The gap now down to 14 seconds, but it only has to be 1 second or less even for him to take the 9 points. No prizes for winning the race by a long way. Following Senna, but behind is the battle that matters and the battle that's interesting, Alesi and Berger.
Yeah, and something very interesting as well is that whilst Wojtek has moved up into 6th position, in 7th place, and right behind him is Eric Bernard in the Lola Lamborghini, and if Bernard could only get past the Onyx in front of him, it would enable him to finish 6th and earn a championship point, which would be an enormous help to the Lola team, because they are currently having to pre-qualify, and that would avoid him having to do so. They'd probably move up into the... There's the battle! That is Wojtek, followed by Eric Bernard, 6th and 7th. Now, if Bernard, the Frenchman, there he is, in the red, yellow and blue Lamborghini V12 engined Lola, can get ahead of Gregor Wojtek, and he's got an enormous incentive to do so. It will be absolute heaven for him and his team.
Yes, and the race is hotting up again, because Berger is now right on Alesi's tail. He's closed the gap right up, and Berger yet again found a new lease of life. And he is attacking flat out at Alesi.
Looking to make it a McLaren 1st and 2nd, with Senna's lead on lap 72 down to 13.5 seconds. No problem. He can afford to lose 2 seconds a lap and still win. And as James just said, there are no prizes for winning by 50 seconds as opposed to 5 seconds or even 1/5 of a second. Winning is what matters, and winning is seeing the checkered flag first. Senna leads then, a battle between Alesi and Berger for 2nd. Boutsen is 4th and lapped, of course. Caffey is 5th. This is the battle for 6th position between the Swiss driver Gregor Wojtek, driving in Peter Monteverdi's Onyx, which he took over from the Moneytron sponsorship, and sadly that eventually necessitated Mike Earl, the man who'd founded the team, leaving it, as had already Alan Jenkins, the designer of the car. But it continues to show promise, notwithstanding the fact that it probably isn't having the development that it might have done. Wojtek from Switzerland is fighting for his first ever Grand Prix World Championship point, as is Eric Bernard, the Frenchman behind him, number 29, who is only in his 6th Grand Prix, and it looks to me as though it's going to be Bernard's point. Wojtek, of course, knows what the score is. Into the Mirabeau, which is what the place that caused the problem earlier on in the race, when it had to be stopped and restarted. Down to Lowe's hairpin, out of it, into the Portier, into the tunnel. Bernard, of course, has got much more power from his V12 Lamborghini engine than has Wojtek from his Ford V8 DFR. And Bernard shapes up to go through on the inside. Wojtek closes the door, they roll round the chicane, and now Eric Bernard is close enough to challenge Wojtek as they come out of the Rascasse and get the power down before Sainte Devote. That's a little while yet. They're round the swimming pool complex, down to the Rascasse when they come out of this, which is now, and you can see that Bernard has really got the Lola on the ragged edge, nearly losing it at the front. Now this is Bernard's chance. Can he go through before Sainte Devote? Yeah, and meantime, Berger is right up with Alesi.
Yes, they went past across the start-finish line very close together, and this is the battle, but we've got a pair of them now battling over the points. And Berger making one tremendous effort. The end of a long, hard race in an uncomfortable car. He must be feeling absolutely terrible, but of course, with the stimulation of this, at least that nullifies a lot of the pain. And we'll watch this battle all the way around through the tunnel and down to Mansell's favourite passing place, and Berger not prepared to brave it out into the chicane. But we'll see if Alesi is blocking at all, because he's not, as Berger looks inside. Now, look at the difference in driving between Alesi and Wojtek. Wojtek was all over the road, weaving at Bologna as he was going, which is not good driving, not necessary to driving properly on a circuit such as this. Last time over the start-finish line, Berger was challenging Alesi, not this time, and not close enough to challenge into Saint-Tropez.
Well, I say again, what an absolutely stunning race by 25-year-old Jean Alesi, who has withstood this pressure from Berger for lap after lap after lap without putting a wheel wrong, which is more than he did in the final half hour of practice this morning. He went off and smashed the left rear suspension of the same car that he is in now. Race order, incidentally, it's Senna is now only 11 seconds ahead of this battle, but he is on his 75th lap, so he's just playing it very coolly indeed. In fourth position, it's still Thierry Boutsen. Fifth is still Cathy, and the battle for sixth and seventh still rages between Gregor Wojtek and Eric Bernard, as closely, in fact even closer than this battle for second place between the high-nosed Tyrrell of Jean Alesi. Now, I'll tell you that Boutsen has just gone through to complete a lap, and you're looking at... He's in fourth position, and you can see that these two are nearly three-quarters of a lap ahead of him as Berger has another look. There was no way he was going to get through there, but all the time, of course, Alesi is seeing this red and white shape bobbing about in first his right mirror and then his left mirror. He's got a bit of a gap, and he's all right as he comes up to Saint-Tropez, because Berger is certainly not close enough. Senna is 10.7 seconds ahead now, and he's on his 76th lap with 3 to go, including the one he is on. It's going to be a close finish, but it's going to be a victory for Senna. Of that there seems no doubt, as Alesi and Berger come up to lap. Let us see. As It's Cathy in the arrows, who is in fifth position, and Bernard is in sixth position. Eric Bernard has got ahead of Gregor Wojtek up into sixth position and up into the points. And the two cars touched each other at the Jet-a-Port as they went through. But it's Bernard in the points for the first time in his short Grand Prix career, and Gerard Larousse of Lola will be biting his lip with worry, because he desperately needs that point to avoid pre-qualification in the second half of the championship series after Britain. And Alesi has still got Cathy in front of him, and this could help Berger.
Yes, Berger dropped back a little bit. He needs to be right on his tail to take advantage of any problems that Cathy can cause to Alesi. Now, Berger needed to be a bit closer. In the meantime, I think the resolution of the battle between Bernard and at least Cathy allows both cars to go through. So they get through cleanly, but nothing has changed. And the battle with Bernard and Wojtek, I think, was resolved in a fair way. I didn't like the way that Wojtek was weaving all over the road at all, because he was making it impossible, difficult enough to pass anyway, without the driver in front being dangerous. And I think that what happened, the cars collided as he weaved, and fortunately for Bernard, he stayed on the road, and Wojtek now seems to have disappeared off the leaderboard. So I think that must have put him out of the race. We didn't actually see it.
Oh my goodness, we're seeing this. This is lap 77 for race leader Ayrton Senna. He's about to come through and start his last and victorious lap of the 1990 Monaco Grand Prix to make it 3 wins in 4 years. The first one in the Lotus
the second one in the McLaren, and the third one in the McLaren. He's still got this lap to do, admittedly, and you can't count chickens before they're hatched, but it would seem that the beak of the Ayrton Senna chicken is pushing its way through the shell now as he starts his last lap. But the gap is down to only 7.8 seconds. Surely there is nothing wrong with Senna, because Alesi and Berger are gaining hand on. Look at this! This is Senna, and within sight of him are Alesi and Berger, first, second and third in the same shot. Now surely Senna is not playing it so cool that he's going to allow them to close right. My goodness, this is unbelievable, because Alesi has just gone round 4 seconds faster than Ayrton Senna. This is the last lap of the Monaco Grand Prix, and it seems that Senna may be in trouble. He's entering the tunnel for the last time. I don't think he can be in trouble, but you can see how close a finish it's going to be. And if Senna is in fact just spinning it out to enthrall people, my goodness, he is succeeding, because Senna leads at the last chicane. He's got to go round the back, and Berger is challenging Alesi. We haven't had a finish like this for a long, long time. First, second and third in the same picture on the last lap as Ayrton Senna comes out of the swimming pool complex. Is he in trouble? Surely not. This is the last corner of the last lap, and Ayrton Senna is, I hesitate to use the word arrogantly, but brilliantly, and Berger loses it almost. And the Monaco Grand Prix finishes with victory for Ayrton Senna, second Jean Alesi, and in third position Gerhard Berger. What an absolutely sensational finish. And the gap between the three of them was 2 seconds. 2 seconds covers the first three home in the 1990 Monaco Grand Prix. And no doubt absolutely delighted, overjoyed in fact, Ayrton Senna and his Brazilian following, showing their pleasure from the Hotel de Paris by waving his country's flag. And as usual, traditional, the marshals wave their flags. Then victory in the 1999 Monaco Grand Prix for Ayrton Senna. A brilliant drive for Jean Alesi in third position, Berger third, and McLaren first and third.
So Senna from Alesi and Berger, and this is what it does to the World Drivers' Championship. Senna now stretches his lead to 6 points over Gerhard Berger. Jean Alesi moving in to third position, but Ayrton Senna, the master of Monaco, his third victory at the circuit in 4 years.
Sua Altezza Serenissima il Principe Ranieri gli consegnerà la coppa per il vincitore di questa 48esima edizione del Gran Premio di Monaco.
Ganz riesige Begeisterung hier bei uns auf der Startzielgeraden. Die Fahrer sind zur Siegerehrung herbeigekommen. Es stehen da Jean Alesi, Ayrton Senna und Gerhard Berger. Der große Favorit Ayrton Senna hat die Sache wieder mal entschieden. Und Jean Alesi bestimmt eine fantastische Leistung, was er gebracht hat. Und Gerhard Berger kann mit dem dritten Platz auch sehr zufrieden sein.
6e présence pour le pilote brésilien ici sur Monaco, champion depuis 1988. Il obtient ici aussi une 14e fois le meilleur tour en course. On le rappelle, c'est sa 22e victoire. Pour le moteur Honda, c'est la 54e victoire du moteur Honda sur 142 Grands Prix disputés. Nous sommes donc avec la victoire du 488e Grand Prix du championnat de Formule 1. Le championnat du monde, Ayrton Senna prend la tête avec 22 points, Berger est deuxième avec 16 points, Jean Alesi est troisième avec 13 points. Dans quelques instants, nous allons donc saluer la victoire et son Altesse va donc féliciter Ayrton Senna pour sa 3e victoire en principauté. Bravo donc, l'hymne brésilien donc à saluer, ainsi que l'hymne britannique pour la victoire donc, de la voiture. Bravo donc les trois pilotes de ce podium se retrouvent également sur les 3 premières positions du championnat du monde. Le moitié chandon donc est complètement arrosé par donc Ayrton Senna sur tous les caméramans. Il est donc très heureux. Jean Alesi en fait de même. Jean Alesi félicité par le président donc Jean-Marie Vallet tout à l'heure, ainsi qu'une belle bagarre donc au moitié chandon entre Berger et Alesi. Alesi donc qui fait une très très belle 2e place. Je crois qu'on peut applaudir Jean Alesi.
Grande entusiasmo naturalmente per i 3 vincitori di questo Gran Premio di Monaco, molto entusiasmo per Jean Alesi, il giovane francese che sta facendo sognare tutti, un ragazzo davvero straordinario che ha fatto una bellissima gara. Ayrton Senna, Jean Alesi e Gerhard Berger sul podio di questo 48esimo Gran Premio di Monaco.
Belle victoire aussi pour Goodyear, c'est la 236e victoire pour les pneumatiques Goodyear. Il faut signaler aussi que Jean Alesi était sur des Pirelli pour la 2e place. Les Pirelli donc ont obtenu la 2e place ici à Monaco. Et...
But I'm sure it wasn't.
It was a good race. I was really frustrated after the first start when we had to stop the race, because the biggest difficulty for me would be the start, to get it right and be clear of any accident on the first corner and also take the lead. And when I hear was my teammate with Prost, I just couldn't believe. And okay, we go for it, everything again. It's another risk again on the start, and also a problem with the transmission to make 2 starts, but everything came good. And then I tried to be careful at the beginning of the race with the tires particularly, and was okay. I was just progressive going away, sometimes slowing down on purpose, and the gap was maintaining level. But everything was fine. I had then, after 1/3 of the race, a problem with the engine. Was running fine, but I lost some power, and then I was very concerned, because also then the engine sound changed during the race, and I was really concerned that I would have a mechanical problem. But I just dropped the revs a lot and tried to drive more economy on the engine, put more mixture on it and everything, and was okay. The next problem were the back markers only. Some of them were not correct. They stay half a lap in front, and then was very difficult that.
At the end you slowed right down. That was presumably to make the most of your car and just save it at the end when you didn't need it.
Well, the problem is after you slow down a little bit, you lose your optimum pressure, tire pressures, and the car starts to be a little bit funny to drive. And given that I had also a difficulty with the engine, I just decided to give a real go and slow down the maximum that I could, just to minimize the risk. I had a big moment when War expanded the swimming pool, and I come there, I saw yellow lights, yellow flags. I slow down, and I see the arrow from Marshall pointing me where I should go before the corner, where it should be free. And I go to the inside, and the car is there at the inside, not the outer side, and I was really, really scared there. But then, after that moment, I really slowed down a lot.
Congratulations once again, Elton. Gerhard, a very tough race for you. You chased Jean Alesi the whole way, and of course there was that incident on the first start. What happened there?
I had a good start. Was behind Alesi, and he overtaken the Mirabeau corner Prost. Prost in the last moment just opened the gap, go wide, let him pass, and I got just inside to pass him too, because I couldn't stop the car, and he just come in. I think he didn't see me in the mirror, and he just went in my car. I couldn't do anything. I tried to stop, but with